piggy bank hit the hospital table with a sound like a heart breaking. It's all I have. 7 years old, blonde braids, blue eyes that saw straight through the leather and scars to something nobody else could see. $2,847. Every birthday penny, every lost tooth quarter, every coin saved for 3 years to buy a star in heaven for her dead father. She gave it all to a stranger the whole town wanted gone. The biker looked at the pink ceramic pig, then at the child who just sacrificed her only dream for him. Why? His voice shattered. Because everyone deserves someone. That answer broke a man who'd survived 2 wars. It shamed a town that had forgotten how to love. And it started something that would make all of Colorado weep. Subscribe now and follow this story to the end. Comment below, what city are you watching from? Let us see how far one little girl's courage has traveled. The motorcycle hit the pavement at 43 miles per hour. Metal screamed against asphalt. Sparks exploded like fireworks across Main Street. The rider's body separated from the machine mid-slide, tumbling across the intersection like a rag doll thrown by an angry child. Sarah Richardson slammed her brakes so hard her sedan fishtailed. "Mama!" Lily screamed from the back seat. "Stay in the car." Emma's hands were already on the door handle. "Don't move, Lily. Promise me." "But Mama!" "Promise me." "I promise." Emma was running before she finished speaking. Her nurse's training kicked in like muscle memory. Airway, breathing, circulation. She dropped to her knees beside the motionless figure, her hands already reaching for his neck to check his pulse. He was alive. Barely. His helmet had cracked on impact but hadn't come off. Blood seeped from beneath the visor, pooling on the concrete. His left arm bent at an angle that made Emma's stomach turn. Through the torn leather jacket, she could see road rash spreading across his shoulder like a crimson map. "Someone call 911, she shouted. Nobody moved. Emma looked up. A crowd had gathered, maybe 15, 20 people, standing in a loose semicircle around the accident scene. But they kept their distance. 10 feet, 15 feet, close enough to watch, far enough to stay clean. "Did anyone call 911? She asked again. Old Mr. Henderson, the man who'd owned the general store for 60 years, held up his phone. "They're coming. I need blankets. He's going into shock." Silence. "Blankets!" Emma's voice cracked with desperation. "Towels, anything. He's freezing." Patricia Wells, who ran the quilting shop 2 doors down, crossed her arms over her chest. "That's a Hell's Angels jacket he's wearing." Emma's hands froze on the man's pulse point. She looked down. Really looked this time. The leather jacket was black, worn soft with age and miles. On the back, partially visible where it had ridden up during the slide, she could see the edge of a patch. A skull. Wings. Hell's Angels. "So what?" Emma said. "He's still a human being." "Is he, though?" Howard Jenkins stepped forward. He owned the insurance agency across the street. His voice carried that particular tone of moral authority that small-town businessmen often confuse with wisdom. "Those people are criminals, drug dealers, God knows what else." "He's bleeding out on Main Street, Howard. Maybe he should have thought about that before he drove through our town like he owned it." Emma stared at him. She'd known Howard Jenkins her entire life. He'd sold her parents their first home insurance policy. He'd sent flowers when her husband James died in Afghanistan. And now he stood there, hands in his pockets, watching a man die. "Get me something to stop the bleeding," Emma said slowly, "or get out of my way." "Emma," Howard's voice softened, but his feet didn't move. "Think about what you're doing. Think about Lily. You want your daughter associated with this?" Emma didn't answer. She was already stripping off her cardigan, pressing it against the worst of the road rash. The blood soaked through almost immediately. Behind her, in the sedan, 7-year-old Lily pressed her face against the window. She couldn't hear what the adults were saying, but she could see. She watched her mother kneeling in the street, hands red with someone else's blood. She watched the circle of neighbors standing back, arms crossed, faces hard, and she watched the man on the ground. He wasn't moving. He wasn't making any sound. He was just lying there, alone, like a broken toy that nobody wanted anymore. Lily's hand found her backpack on the seat beside her. Inside, she could feel the weight of Pinky, her ceramic piggy bank, the one her daddy had given her before he left for the last time. Before the soldiers came to their door with a folded flag in words that didn't make sense. She didn't know why, but she held on to that backpack like it was the most important thing in the world. The ambulance arrived 11 minutes later. 11 minutes of Emma fighting alone. 11 minutes of the crowd watching. 11 minutes of whispers and judgments in carefully maintained distance. The paramedics were efficient, professional. They loaded the unconscious man onto a stretcher, started an IV, stabilized his neck. One of them, a young woman with tired eyes, looked at Emma's blood-soaked hands. "You a nurse?" "Riverside Community, night shift." "You probably saved his life." Emma didn't feel like a hero. She felt sick. "Does anyone know who he is?" the paramedic asked the crowd. Silence. "Did anyone see what happened?" More silence. Tommy Reeves, the kid who drove the delivery truck that the biker had swerved to avoid, finally spoke up. His voice shook. "He ran the red light. I didn't see him until... I didn't mean to." "It's not your fault, son." The paramedic's voice was gentle. "Anyone else?" Patricia Wells cleared her throat. "We don't know him. He's not from here." "Obviously," Howard muttered. The ambulance doors closed. The sirens started. And just like that, the stranger with the Hells Angels jacket disappeared from Main Street, leaving nothing behind but a streak of blood on the pavement and a wrecked motorcycle wrapped around a parking meter. The crowd dispersed quickly. People had things to do, places to be, lives to live. Within 10 minutes, the only evidence that anything had happened was the dark stain on the concrete and the twisted metal being loaded onto a tow truck. Emma stood there staring at her hands. "Mama?" She turned. Lily had gotten out of the car despite her promise. She stood on the sidewalk, her yellow sundress bright against the gray morning, her backpack clutched to her chest. "I told you to stay in the car. Is the man going to be okay?" Emma didn't know how to answer that. She didn't know anything about him. Not his name, not his story, not whether he had anyone in the world who would care if he lived or died. "I don't know, baby." "Why didn't anyone help you?" The question hit Emma like a physical blow. She looked at her daughter, 7 years old, eyes like her father's, that same stubborn set to her jaw, and realized she had no good answer. "Sometimes," Emma said slowly, "people are afraid of things they don't understand." "But he was hurt." "I know. If I was hurt, would people help me?" "Of course they would." "Then why didn't they help him?" Emma knelt down, bringing herself to Lily's eye level. Her hands were still wet with the stranger's blood, so she kept them away from her daughter's face. "Some people think that not everyone deserves help, Lily. They think you have to earn it, that you have to be the right kind of person." Lily's face scrunched up in confusion. "That's dumb." Emma almost laughed. Almost. "Yeah, baby, it is." The man's name was Marcus Stone. They found his wallet in the wreckage of his motorcycle, a worn leather bifold containing $47, a expired driver's license from Arizona, and a faded photograph of a young boy with brown hair and a gap-toothed smile. No insurance card, no emergency contact, no indication of where he'd come from or where he was going. The Riverside Community Hospital admitted him to the ICU at 9:47 a.m. Diagnosis: compound fracture of the left radius and ulna, 3 broken ribs, grade 3 concussion, extensive road rash requiring debridement, and internal bleeding that required emergency surgery to repair. Dr. Robert Chen, the trauma surgeon on call, worked on him for 6 hours. When he finally emerged from the operating room, Brenda Morrison was waiting. She was 52 years old, had worked in hospital administration for 23 years, and had developed a particular talent for extracting payment from people who couldn't pay. "The biker?" she asked. Dr. Chen nodded, pulling off his surgical cap. "He'll live, assuming no complications. Insurance? None that we've found." Brenda's lips pressed into a thin line. "Next of kin? Nothing. We went through his personal effects. No phone, destroyed in the crash. No contacts. Just a wallet with $47 and a photo of a kid. So we have an uninsured John Doe with extensive injuries requiring prolonged hospitalization." Brenda pulled out her tablet, already calculating. "Surgery, ICU, imaging, medications, physical therapy. We're looking at $80,000 to $90,000 minimum." "He's a veteran." Brenda looked up. "Excuse me?" "There's a Marine Corps tattoo on his right forearm, and some of those scars aren't from the accident. They're old. Combat wounds, if I had to guess." "Being a veteran doesn't pay hospital bills, Robert. I'm just saying, there might be resources." "There might be." Brenda tucked her tablet under her arm. "But right now, this hospital is looking at a significant financial loss. The board isn't going to be happy." Dr. Chen watched her walk away. He thought about the man on his operating table, the steady hands that had fought to save him, the scars that told stories of other fights, other survivals. He thought about the Hell's Angels patch that the nurses had cut away with the ruined jacket, the way they'd handled it like it was contaminated. And he wondered, not for the first time, when exactly medicine had become more about money than people. Marcus Stone woke up 3 days later. The first thing he saw was a white ceiling. The second thing was pain, a full-body symphony of agony that made him want to scream and pass out simultaneously. The third thing was a face, not a doctor, not a nurse, a child. A little girl with blonde hair and 2 braids, blue eyes wide as dinner plates, standing at the foot of his bed like she'd appeared there by magic. "You're awake," she said. Marcus tried to speak. His throat felt like sandpaper wrapped in barbed wire. All that came out was a croak. "Wait," the girl said. She grabbed a cup of water from the bedside table, complete with a bendy straw, and held it toward his face. "Mama says you have to drink small sips." Marcus stared at her. He had no idea who she was, where he was, or how he'd gotten here. The last thing he remembered was the road, the truck, the realization that he wasn't going to stop in time. He took a small sip, then another. "Better?" the girl asked. He nodded slightly. Even that small movement sent lightning bolts through his skull. "I'm Lily," she said. "My mama's a nurse here. She's the one who helped you when you crashed. Nobody else would." Marcus processed this information slowly. His brain felt like it was running through molasses. "Where?" His voice was a ragged whisper. "Riverside Community Hospital. You've been asleep for 3 days. Dr. Chen says that's normal because your brain needed to heal." She said this matter-of-factly, like she was reporting the weather. "You broke your arm really bad, and your ribs, and you had to have surgery because you were bleeding inside." Marcus closed his eyes. He remembered now. The intersection, the truck, the split-second decision to lay the bike down rather than hit the delivery vehicle head-on. He'd been on his way to Phoenix, to the Veterans Center that his old buddy Carlos had told him about. One last chance to get his life together. One last attempt at something that looked like hope. And now he was here, wherever here was. "You're not supposed to be in here," the voice came from the doorway. Marcus opened his eyes to see a woman in scrubs, mid-30s, brown hair, exhausted eyes that somehow still managed to look fierce. "Mama!" Lily didn't seem concerned about being caught. "He woke up. I gave him water like you showed me." "Lily, we talked about this." The woman, Emma, Marcus assumed, walked to the bed and immediately began checking his vitals with practiced efficiency. You can't just wander into patients' rooms. But nobody was visiting him. The nurses said nobody's come to see him at all. Emma's hands paused on the blood pressure cuff. Marcus watched the exchange through a haze of pain and medication. He should say something. Thank the woman for helping him. Tell the kid to leave him alone. Something. Instead, he just stared at them. This woman who had apparently saved his life, and her daughter who had apparently decided he was worth checking on. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had decided he was worth anything. "How are you feeling?" Emma asked, her voice professional now. "Any severe pain? Nausea? Dizziness?" "All of the above," Marcus managed. "That's normal. The anesthesia takes a while to work out of your system." She finished with the blood pressure cuff and made a note on her tablet. "I'll let Dr. Chen know you're awake. He'll want to examine you." "Thank you." The words came out automatically, but they felt inadequate. This woman had knelt in his blood while her neighbors stood by and watched. She'd probably ruined her clothes, certainly ruined her morning, and all for a stranger with a jacket that screamed trouble. Emma met his eyes. For a moment, something passed between them, an acknowledgement of what had happened, of what it had cost her, of what it might still cost him. "You're welcome," she said quietly. Then she took Lily's hand and led her toward the door. "Wait." They stopped. Marcus struggled to push himself up slightly, ignoring the screaming protest from his ribs. "The little girl said..." "She said nobody else would help. At the accident." Emma's jaw tightened. "You should rest, Mr. Stone. Marcus Stone." He paused. "Why did you?" "Why did I what?" "Help, if nobody else would." Lily tugged on her mother's hand. "Tell him, Mama. Tell him what you told me." Emma looked down at her daughter, then back at Marcus. Her expression was unreadable. "Because you were hurt," she said simply. "And that's what you do when someone's hurt. You help them." She left before he could respond, but Lily lingered in the doorway, looking back at him with those impossibly blue eyes. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said. "If you want." Marcus didn't know what to say. He didn't know why a 7-year-old would want to visit a broken-down ex-Marine with a bad reputation and worse prospects. But he found himself nodding anyway. Lily smiled, a bright, genuine smile that seemed completely unaware of all the reasons she shouldn't be smiling at him, and disappeared into the hallway. Marcus lay back against the pillows. His body was shattered, his bike was destroyed. He had no money, no insurance, no plan, and no one in the world who would notice if he simply stopped existing. But for some reason, a 7-year-old girl with blonde braids had decided he was worth visiting tomorrow. He didn't understand it. He didn't deserve it. But for the first time in a very long time, Marcus Stone found himself looking forward to tomorrow. The next morning, Brenda Morrison came to collect. She arrived at 8:15 a.m., precisely when visiting hours began, armed with a tablet, a stack of forms, and the particular expression of someone who had delivered bad news so many times, it no longer affected her. "Mr. Stone," she pulled a chair to his bedside without asking permission. "I'm Brenda Morrison, Director of Patient Financial Services. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." "You were hit by a truck, or rather, you hit the pavement avoiding a truck." She didn't smile at her own observation. "I'm here to discuss your financial situation." Marcus's stomach, already unhappy from the pain medication, dropped further. "The current total for your care, surgery, ICU stay, imaging, medications, physician fees, is $73,422. The number hung in the air between them. "That figure will increase significantly," Brenda continued, "depending on how long you remain hospitalized and what additional treatments you require. Dr. Chen estimates at least another 2 weeks before you can be discharged, possibly longer. Physical therapy will be necessary for your arm. Follow-up surgeries may be required." She paused. "Do you have any form of health insurance, Mr. Stone?" "No." "Any assets we should be aware of? Property, vehicles, savings accounts?" "My motorcycle, which is probably totaled." "It is. The towing company has already assessed it as a complete loss." She made a note on her tablet. "Any family members who might be able to assist with payment?" Marcus thought about Jennifer, his ex-wife, who had taken their son and disappeared into a new life that had no room for him. He thought about Ethan, 12 years old now probably, maybe 13, who wouldn't even recognize him if they passed on the street. "No," he said, "no family at all? None that want anything to do with me." Brenda's pen paused over her tablet. For a moment, something human flickered in her professional expression. "I see," she cleared her throat. "In that case, we need to discuss options. The hospital has financial assistance programs for qualifying patients. However, given the extent of your debt and your apparent lack of resources, you'll likely need to consider bankruptcy, which... Can I ask you something?" Brenda blinked. Patience rarely interrupted her during the financial discussion. "Certainly. What happens if I just leave? Walk out right now?" "You can't walk. Your leg isn't fully healed and you're..." "Hypothetically," Brenda set her tablet down. "Hypothetically, the hospital would pursue the debt through collections. Your credit would be destroyed. There could be legal consequences depending on how aggressive the board decides to be." She paused. "And medically speaking, you would probably die. The internal bleeding was severe. Your wounds require professional care. Leaving against medical advice would be inadvisable." Marcus stared at the ceiling. $73,000. More by the time they finished with him. A debt that would follow him for the rest of his life, assuming he had a life left to live. He'd survived Iraq, survived the IED that had killed 2 of his buddies and left him with shrapnel scars across his chest, survived the divorce, the custody battle, the years of drifting from job to job and town to town, survived leaving the Hells Angels when he couldn't stomach what they were becoming. And now he was going to be destroyed by a hospital bill. There was something almost funny about it. Almost. "Is there anything else?" he asked. "I'll need you to sign these forms acknowledging your financial responsibility." Brenda placed a stack of papers on his bedside table. "Take your time reviewing them. I'll be back this afternoon." She stood, collected her tablet, and walked to the door. "Mrs. Morrison," she turned. "The nurse who helped me at the accident, Emma, does she know about this? About the money?" Brenda's expression revealed nothing. "The nursing staff isn't typically involved in patient financial discussions." "That's not what I asked." For a long moment, Brenda just looked at him. Then, so quietly, Marcus almost missed it, she said, "Everyone knows, Mr. Stone. It's a small town." She left. Marcus reached for the stack of papers, but his hand stopped halfway. What was the point? He couldn't pay $73,000. He couldn't pay $73. He had $47 to his name, assuming the hospital hadn't already taken that for incidentals. He let his hand fall back to the bed. Outside his window, he could hear the sounds of the town going about its business. Cars passing, people talking, life continuing on, completely indifferent to the man lying broken in room 217. This was it, he realized. This was how it ended. Not in combat, not in a blaze of glory, not even in the motorcycle crash that should have killed him. No, Marcus Stone was going to be slowly crushed under the weight of a debt he could never repay, in a town full of people who had already decided he wasn't worth saving. He closed his eyes. For the first time since waking up, he wished he hadn't. Lily came back at 3:47 p.m. Marcus knew the exact time because he'd spent the entire day watching the clock, counting the hours until the financial woman returned to collect her forms, counting the minutes until someone came to tell him he was being discharged to nowhere. Instead, the door opened and a small blonde head poked through. "Are you awake?" Marcus opened his eyes. Unfortunately. Lily took this as an invitation. She slipped into the room, backpack clutched to her chest as always, and approached his bed with the cautious confidence of a child who had never learned to be afraid of strangers. "I brought you something." She pulled a piece of paper from her backpack and held it up proudly. It was a drawing, crayon on construction paper, depicting what appeared to be a motorcycle, a person lying on the ground, and another person, much smaller, standing nearby with what looked like a pink blob in her hands. "That's you," Lily explained, pointing to the prone figure. "And that's me. And that's Pinky." "Pinky?" Lily reached into her backpack and pulled out a ceramic piggy bank. It was pink with white spots, slightly chipped around one ear, and clearly well-loved. "My daddy gave her to me," Lily said, holding the piggy bank carefully, "before he went away." "Your daddy? He was a soldier, like you." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. "I wasn't a soldier. I was a Marine." "What's the difference?" "Marines go into the water sometimes." Lily considered this. "Did you go into the water?" "A few times." "Was it scary?" "Sometimes." Lily sat down in the visitor's chair, settling Pinky on her lap. She seemed completely unbothered by the awkward silence, by the medical equipment beeping around them, by the fact that she was having a conversation with a man who looked like he belonged in a prison yard rather than a hospital bed. "My daddy was brave," she said. "Mama says he was a hero." "What happened to him?" "He got hurt really bad, in a place called Afghanistan." Lily pronounced the word carefully, like she'd practiced it. "He didn't come back." Marcus didn't say anything. What could he say? That he was sorry? That he understood? That he'd seen dozens of men just like her father die in places just like that, for reasons that got harder to explain with each passing year? "I don't really remember him," Lily continued. "I was only 5 when he went away, but Mama shows me pictures, and I talk to him sometimes, at night when I'm going to sleep." "What do you talk about?" "Everything, school and stuff, my friends, what I want to be when I grow up." She paused. "I asked him about you last night." Marcus's throat tightened. "You did?" "Yeah. I asked him if you were a good person or a bad person, because everyone in town keeps saying you're bad, but you don't seem bad to me." "What did your daddy say?" Lily shrugged. "He didn't answer. He never answers. But I think that means I'm supposed to figure it out myself." The room was quiet except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Marcus had been called many things in his life: soldier, Marine, husband, father, criminal, biker, threat. Never once in all his years had he been called a good person. Not by his ex-wife, who had looked at him like he was a stranger in their own home. Not by his son, who had stopped asking when daddy was coming back. Not by the brothers in the Hells Angels, who respected strength and loyalty but never talked about goodness. And here was a 7-year-old girl asking her dead father whether the scary biker in room 217 deserved a second chance. "I'm not a good person, Lily." The words came out before he could stop them, before he could craft a lie that would make her feel better, before he could pretend to be something he wasn't. Lily tilted her head, considering. "Why not? I've done bad things, made bad choices, hurt people who didn't deserve it." "On purpose?" The question caught him off guard. "What? Did you hurt people on purpose? Because you wanted to?" Marcus thought about it, really thought, for the first time in years. He thought about the fights, the bar brawls and the road rage incidents, and the bloody knuckles and the faces he'd punched. He thought about the drugs he'd run for the club, the guns he'd carried, the threats he'd made. He thought about Jennifer's face when she'd finally given up on him, and Ethan's face when he'd realized Daddy wasn't coming to his birthday party. Had he wanted to hurt people? Or had he just been so broken, so lost, so desperate to feel something that he'd stopped caring who got caught in the crossfire? "I don't know," he said finally. "I don't think so, but I'm not sure that matters." Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her small hand on top of his. "My daddy hurt people too," she said softly. "That's what soldiers do, right? They hurt the bad guys so the bad guys don't hurt us. But that doesn't make them bad. It makes them brave." Marcus stared at her hand on his. Her fingers were so small, so fragile, so completely unafraid. "I'm not brave, Lily." "Then why did you almost die?" "Mama said you turned your motorcycle so you wouldn't hit Tommy's truck." You got hurt so he wouldn't get hurt. That's brave. Marcus hadn't thought about it that way. In the moment, there had been no thought at all, just instinct, reaction, the muscle memory of 1,000 combat situations where you protected your brothers first and worried about yourself second. He hadn't been trying to be brave. He'd just been trying not to kill a kid in a delivery truck. Maybe, he said. Lily smiled. It was the kind of smile that children give freely, without calculation or expectation. The kind of smile that adults spend years learning to suppress. I think you're brave, she said, and I think you're good. You just forgot. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. I have to go. Mama doesn't know I'm here, but I'll come back tomorrow, okay? Lily, Pinky thinks you're good too. She held up the piggy bank. She's a very good judge of character. Daddy said so. And then she was gone, slipping out the door as quietly as she'd arrived, leaving Marcus alone with the beeping monitors and the unsigned financial forms, and a feeling in his chest that he couldn't quite name. He looked at the drawings she'd left behind, the motorcycle, the fallen man, the little girl with the pink blob. Everyone deserves someone, she'd said that day in his doorway. But did they? Did he? Marcus didn't know. He didn't know anything anymore, except that a 7-year-old girl had decided he was worth saving, and for reasons he couldn't explain, that felt like it might actually matter. The whispers spread through Riverside like wildfire. By the end of the first week, everyone in town knew about the Hells Angels biker in room 217. They knew about the accident, how he'd run the red light, how Tommy Reeves had almost hit him, how Emma Richardson had been the only one to help while everyone else stood by and watched. They knew about the hospital bill, $73,000 and climbing, no insurance, no family, no way to pay. And they knew, because small towns always know these things, that Emma's daughter had been seen visiting him. I heard she brings him drawings, Patricia Wells said to her quilting circle. Every day, just walks right into his room like he's family. That can't be right. Martha Henderson, the general store owner's wife, shook her head. Emma wouldn't allow it. You'd think so, wouldn't you? But apparently the little girl is quite determined. Determined to get herself killed, more like. Barbara Crawford, the insurance agent's wife, set down her needle with a disapproving click. Those Hells Angels people are criminals, drug dealers, murderers probably. What kind of mother lets her child near someone like that? Emma's always had strange ideas, Patricia said. Remember when she married that soldier? Everyone said it would end badly, and look what happened. That's hardly the same thing. James was a hero. Was he? I heard he came back from his first tour all messed up in the head, screaming at night, drinking, couldn't hold down a job. Patricia. I'm just saying. Patricia raised her hands defensively. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Emma married a damaged man, and now she's letting her daughter get attached to another one. It's a pattern. The quilting circle fell silent. No one defended Emma. No one pointed out that James Richardson had died protecting his unit from an ambush. No one mentioned that Emma worked double shifts to support her daughter alone. No one suggested that maybe, just maybe, a 7-year-old visiting a lonely man in the hospital wasn't the worst thing that could happen. But then, that's how it worked in Riverside. Gossip was currency, judgment was sport, and strangers, especially scary ones with leather jackets and criminal connections, were the easiest targets of all. At the hospital, things weren't much better. Marcus had been moved from the ICU to a regular room, which Brenda Morrison explained was both a good sign medically and a cost-saving measure administratively. His bill had passed $80,000. By the time they finished with him, it would be closer to $90,000. No one had come to see him except Lily. Not that he'd expected visitors, but there was something particularly brutal about lying in a hospital bed, day after day, watching the door stay closed while nurses came and went with careful professionalism and careful distance. They were polite. They checked his vitals. They administered his medications. They changed his bandages and adjusted his IV and asked if he needed anything. But they didn't linger. They didn't chat. They didn't look at him like he was a person rather than a problem. Except for Emma. She came once a day, usually at the end of her shift, to check on him in a way that felt different from the other nurses. More personal, less clinical. "How's the pain?" she asked on day 5. "Manageable." "Liar, I can see it in your face. You should ask for stronger medication." "I've had enough painkillers to last a lifetime." Emma looked at him sharply. "Meaning?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't want to explain the years after the Marines, the pills that doctors had handed out like candy, the addiction that had crept up on him before he realized what was happening, the brutal withdrawal that had nearly killed him. "Meaning," he said finally, "I'd rather hurt." Emma didn't push. She just made a note on her tablet and moved on. "Lily keeps asking about you. She comes every day." "I know. I've tried to stop her." A ghost of a smile crossed Emma's face. "She's stubborn. Wonder where she gets that from." Emma actually laughed. It was a small laugh, quickly suppressed, but it was real. "Her father," she said, "James, he was the most stubborn man I ever met. Once he decided something, that was it. No amount of arguing would change his mind." "Sounds like a Marine." "He was Army, actually. Don't tell him I said that." The past tense hung between them. Marcus wanted to ask, but it wasn't his business. Nothing about this woman or her daughter was his business. "She told me," he said instead, "about her father, that he didn't come back." Emma's face tightened. "She talks to him sometimes. At night. I hear her through the wall." "She told me that too." "She's never talked to anyone else about it. Not her teachers, not her grandmother, not even me most of the time." Emma looked at him with something that might have been curiosity. "Why you?" Marcus had no idea. He had no idea why a 7-year-old had decided to trust a stranger with her deepest secrets, or why that same stranger was lying here actually caring about the answer. "I don't know," he said honestly. Emma studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded, as if his answer had confirmed something she'd already suspected. "She sees something in you," she said. "I don't know what it is, but she sees it. Maybe she's wrong." "Maybe." Emma picked up her tablet. "But my daughter has never been wrong about a person. Not once. She knew something was off about her teacher last year before anyone else did. Turns out the woman was stealing from the school. She knew the new family down the street would be good neighbors before they'd even finished unpacking. She knows things. She's 7. She's special." Emma moved toward the door. "I don't know who you are, Marcus Stone. I don't know what you've done or what you're running from. But if my daughter says you're worth saving, then I'm inclined to believe her." She left before he could respond. Marcus lay there in the silence of room 217, watching the evening light fade through the window. Worth saving. He wasn't sure he'd ever been worth saving, but for the first time in years, he found himself wanting to be. The second week began with a knock on Marcus's door that wasn't Lily. He looked up from the ceiling he'd been memorizing and saw a man in his 50s standing in the doorway. Silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of posture that said he was used to being in charge. "Mr. Stone?" "Depends on who's asking." The man stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Thomas Bradley, mayor of Riverside." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. In his experience, politicians only showed up when they wanted something or when they wanted you gone. "What can I do for you, Mayor?" Bradley pulled the visitor's chair closer to the bed and sat down, crossing one leg over the other like they were about to have a pleasant conversation about the weather. "I'll be direct with you, Mr. Stone. Your presence in our town has caused some concern." "My presence? You mean the fact that I'm lying in a hospital bed, unable to move?" "I mean the fact that you're a member of a known criminal organization who ran a red light, caused an accident, and is now racking up medical bills that someone will eventually have to pay." Marcus stared at him. "I'm not a member of anything anymore." The jacket you were wearing suggests otherwise. I left the Hells Angels 6 months ago. Left? Bradley's eyebrows rose. My understanding is that people don't just leave organizations like that. Your understanding is correct, which is why I was on my way to Arizona when I crashed in your charming little town. The mayor's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. You were running. I was leaving. There's a difference. Is there? Marcus pushed himself up slightly, ignoring the protest from his ribs. What do you want, Mayor? You didn't come here to discuss semantics. Bradley uncrossed his legs and leaned forward. I want to know what your plans are, how long you intend to stay, whether you're going to bring trouble to my town. My plans were to get to Phoenix, to a veterans center that helps guys like me put their lives back together. Instead, I'm lying here with a broken arm, broken ribs, and a bill I can't pay. Marcus's voice hardened. As for trouble, I didn't ask your delivery truck to be in that intersection. I didn't ask for any of this. And yet here we are. Yeah, here we are. The two men stared at each other. Marcus had faced down insurgents in Fallujah, had stood his ground against Hells Angels enforcers who wanted to make an example of him. A small-town mayor in a nice suit didn't intimidate him. But Bradley wasn't trying to intimidate. He was calculating. The hospital board meets next week, the mayor said finally. They're going to discuss your case, the financial burden you represent. And I have influence on that board. Significant influence. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying that there are options, ways to make this situation easier for everyone involved. You mean ways to make me disappear? Bradley stood up, smoothing his jacket. I mean ways to resolve this without it becoming a bigger problem than it needs to be. Think about it, Mr. Stone. You're a smart man. You know how the world works. He walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. I've heard that Emma Richardson's daughter has been visiting you. Marcus's hands clenched the bedsheets. I would strongly encourage you to discourage those visits. Emma is a valued member of our community. Her daughter doesn't need to be associated with your situation. Her daughter can make her own choices. She's 7 years old. She can't make any choices. Bradley's voice was pleasant, but his eyes were ice. Have a good day, Mr. Stone. We'll talk again soon. He left. Marcus sat in the silence, his heart pounding against his broken ribs. The message had been clear. Get out, or we'll push you out. Stay away from the nurse and her daughter. Don't make waves. The same message he'd heard 100 times before, in 100 different ways. You don't belong here. You're not wanted. You're a problem to be solved. He'd spent his whole life being a problem. Maybe it was time to start being something else. The question was, what? Emma found out about the mayor's visit 3 hours later. She was charting in the nurse's station when Dr. Chen approached her, his face troubled. Did you hear? Hear what? Mayor Bradley came to see your patient, the biker. Emma's pen stopped moving. My patient? Come on, Emma. Everyone knows you've been checking on him more than necessary, and everyone knows about Lily. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. Lily is my business. I'm not judging, I'm warning you. Dr. Chen lowered his voice. Bradley is putting pressure on the board. He wants Stone discharged as soon as medically possible. He's talking about transferring him to a county facility, somewhere far away from Riverside. He's not ready for discharge. His arm hasn't healed properly. He's still at risk for... I know, I told them that, but Bradley has the board convinced that keeping him here is bad for the hospital's image, bad for the town's image. Emma set down her pen. Bad for Bradley's image, you mean? Election year coming up? That too, Dr. Chen sighed. I wanted you to know, whatever you're doing with that man, whatever connection you and Lily have made, you should be prepared. They're going to move him. Soon. When? Maybe next week. Maybe sooner if they can find a facility willing to take him without payment. Emma stared at the chart in front of her. The numbers and notes blurred together. "He has no one," she said quietly. "You know that, right? No family, no friends, nothing. If they transfer him to some county facility in the middle of nowhere, he'll—" "I know. So what are we supposed to do? Just let them throw him away?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, Emma. I really don't. But I know that you can't save everyone. Sometimes people fall through the cracks no matter how hard you try." He walked away, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts. Fall through the cracks. That's what they wanted, for Marcus Stone to simply disappear, out of sight, out of mind. Let him become someone else's problem. But he wasn't someone else's problem. He was here, in her hospital, in her town. He was real and alive and broken, and her daughter had decided he mattered. Emma thought about James, about the man she'd married, the man who'd come back from war with demons he couldn't name and wounds that didn't show. She remembered how people had looked at him in those final years, the whispers, the distance, the slow, deliberate way the town had let him fall. She hadn't been able to save James. Maybe she couldn't save Marcus Stone either, but she could try. Lily was in his room again when Emma arrived at the end of her shift. This time, she didn't scold her daughter. She just stood in the doorway, watching. Lily had brought her coloring books. She sat cross-legged on the visitor's chair, tongue poking out in concentration as she filled in a picture of a butterfly with purple and pink crayons. Marcus lay propped up against his pillows, watching her with an expression Emma had never seen on his face before. Peaceful, almost content. "The wings should be symmetrical," he said. "Butterflies have matching patterns on both sides." "I know," Lily replied without looking up. "But this is a special butterfly. She got hurt on one side, so her wings don't match anymore. But she can still fly." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "A special butterfly?" "Yep, I named her Grace because Mama says grace means getting good things even when you don't deserve them." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Marcus turned his head and saw her standing there. Their eyes met. "She's been here for an hour," he said. "I tried to send her home." "No, you didn't," Lily said matter-of-factly. "You said I could stay if I was quiet. I've been very quiet." "You've been talking the entire time." "That's not the same as being loud." Despite everything, Emma felt herself smile. Her daughter had that effect on people. "Lily, baby, can you give me a minute with Mr. Stone?" Lily looked up, suspicion crossing her small features. "Are you going to yell at him?" "No." "Are you going to tell him he can't see me anymore?" Emma hesitated. "We need to talk about grown-up things." "I hate grown-up things." But Lily gathered her coloring supplies into her backpack and slid off the chair. She paused beside Marcus's bed. "I'll come back tomorrow." "Lily," Emma started. "I'll come back tomorrow," Lily repeated firmly. "Grace isn't finished yet, and Mr. Marcus needs to see how her wings turn out." She walked out of the room with her head held high. Marcus watched her go, something unreadable in his eyes. She's something else. She's stubborn. She's brave. He turned to Emma. "You heard about the mayor's visit." It wasn't a question. Emma nodded, walking closer to his bed. "Word travels fast in a hospital." "Word travels fast in a town like this." Marcus shifted, wincing as his ribs protested. "He wants me gone. Made that pretty clear." "What did he say exactly?" "That he has influence on the hospital board. That there are ways to make my situation easier. That I should stay away from you and Lily." Emma felt her hands curl into fists at her sides. "He has no right. He has every right. He's the mayor. I'm nobody." Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless, the voice of a man who had stopped being surprised by rejection. "Look, Emma, I appreciate what you've done, what Lily's done, but this isn't your fight. You have a life here, a job, a daughter to raise. You don't need to get caught up in my mess." "What if I want to get caught up in it?" The words were out before Emma could stop them. Marcus stared at her. "Why would you want that? Because it's right. She pulled the visitor's chair closer and sat down, putting herself at his eye level. I've lived in this town my whole life. I've watched people get judged and discarded because they didn't fit the mold. I watched it happen to my husband. Your husband? James. He came back from Afghanistan different, broken in ways that didn't show on the surface. He had nightmares, panic attacks. He couldn't hold a job because loud noises made him fall apart. And the same people who had thanked him for his service, who had waved flags and talked about supporting our troops, they started crossing the street to avoid him. They stopped inviting us to neighborhood barbecues. They whispered behind our backs about how maybe he just needed to get over it. Emma's voice cracked slightly. He died feeling like he was a burden, like he didn't deserve help, like the town that had raised him had decided he wasn't worth saving. Marcus was silent. I couldn't save him, Emma continued. I tried, God knows I tried, but I was fighting alone, and it wasn't enough. She looked directly into his eyes. I'm tired of fighting alone, and I'm tired of watching this town throw away people who don't fit their idea of who belongs. I'm not your husband. No, you're not, but you're a person who served this country just like he did, a person who's alone and hurt and facing a wall of people who've decided you're not worth their time. Emma leaned forward. Lily sees something in you. I don't know what it is yet, but I trust her. She's never been wrong. Marcus turned his face away, staring at the wall. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I'm not a good man, Emma. I've done things. I don't care. He looked back at her sharply. I don't care what you've done, Emma repeated. I care about what you do now. I care about the fact that my daughter lights up when she talks about you. I care about the fact that you lay down your motorcycle to avoid hitting a kid in a delivery truck, even though it almost killed you. She paused. That's who you are, not the jacket, not the past. That moment, that choice. Marcus's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, so quietly Emma almost missed it, I don't know how to be anything different. Then learn. It's not that simple. Nothing worth doing is simple. Emma stood up. The mayor wants to push you out. The board is going to meet next week to discuss your case. They're going to try to transfer you to some county facility where you'll be forgotten. Marcus's expression didn't change. So I'm not going to let that happen. How exactly are you planning to stop it? Emma hesitated. The truth was, she didn't know. She had no plan, no strategy, no resources to fight the mayor and the hospital board and the entire weight of a town that had already made up its mind. All she had was stubbornness and a 7-year-old daughter who believed in miracles. I'll figure it out, she said finally. Marcus looked at her with something that might have been respect, or might have been pity. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Probably. You're going to make enemies. I already have enemies. Might as well earn them. For the first time since she'd met him, Marcus Stone smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it transformed his face. Beneath the scars and the stubble and the hardness, she could see the man he might have been, the man he could still be. You remind me of someone, he said. Who? My ex-wife, before she gave up on me. The smile faded. She used to look at me like that, like she could see something worth saving under all the garbage. What happened? I kept proving her wrong. Emma moved toward the door. Then maybe it's time to start proving her right. She left him with that thought, hoping it would take root, hoping it wasn't already too late. The town meeting happened on Thursday night. It wasn't an official meeting about Marcus Stone, but everyone knew that's what it was really about. The agenda said, community safety concerns, which was politicians speak for, let's talk about the undesirable element we want to remove. The community hall filled up fast. Over 200 people crammed into a space designed for 150. Farmers in worn jeans sat next to shop owners in pressed khakis. Teachers leaned against the walls, while retirees claimed the folding chairs up front. Emma stood in the back, her arms crossed, watching the crowd settle. Margaret Anderson, her mother-in-law, appeared beside her. 72 years old, white hair pulled back in a severe bun, backbone made of steel and stubbornness. "You shouldn't be here," Margaret said quietly. "Neither should you. I'm old. I can do whatever I want." Margaret's eyes scanned the room. "Bradley's got the whole town wound up. I've heard more gossip in the past week than I have in the past year." "What are they saying?" "That the biker is a drug dealer, a murderer, that he's using Lily to get close to you, that you're having an affair with him." Emma's jaw dropped. "An affair? He can barely sit up in bed. Since when do facts matter to gossip?" Margaret shook her head. "The point is, people are scared, and when people are scared, they get stupid." Mayor Bradley took the podium at the front of the room. He tapped the microphone twice, and the crowd fell silent. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I know there's been a lot of talk in our community lately about the incident on Main Street 2 weeks ago. Someone in the crowd muttered something that sounded like, 'Hell's Angels.' I want to assure everyone that we're handling the situation," Bradley continued. "I've been in contact with the hospital board, and we're exploring options for transferring the individual in question to a more appropriate facility." "What kind of facility?" someone called out. "A county medical center that's better equipped to handle cases like this." "You mean a charity case?" Howard Jenkins said from his seat near the front. "Someone who can't pay." "I mean someone who doesn't have ties to our community and might be better served elsewhere." Emma felt her fingernails digging into her palms. "But I didn't call this meeting just to provide updates," Bradley said. "I called it because I want to hear from you. What are your concerns? What do you want to see happen?" Patricia Wells stood up immediately. "I want to know why Emma Richardson's daughter has been visiting that man every day." The room went quiet. Emma felt 200 pairs of eyes turned toward her. "Lily has been visiting the patient, yes," Bradley said carefully. "That's a family matter, not a town matter. It becomes a town matter when our children are at risk." Patricia's voice rose. "We don't know who that man is. We don't know what he's done. And Emma is letting her daughter spend hours alone with him." "Lily is never alone with him," Emma said loudly. Head swiveled. "The nurses check every 15 minutes. I monitor the visits personally. And for the record, Marcus Stone is a Marine Corps veteran with 2 tours in Iraq and a Bronze Star for valor." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "He's also a member of the Hell's Angels," Howard Jenkins shot back. "Or are we ignoring that?" "Former member. He left the club 6 months ago." "People don't just leave the Hell's Angels." "He did." Emma stepped forward, moving through the crowd toward the front. "He left because he didn't agree with what they were doing. He was on his way to a veterans rehabilitation center in Phoenix when the accident happened. He's not a criminal. He's a man who served his country and fell through the cracks when he came home." "That's a touching story," Patricia said. "Do you have any proof? Do you have any proof that he's dangerous?" The room erupted. People started shouting over each other, some defending Emma, most attacking. Bradley banged on the podium, trying to restore order. Margaret Anderson's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Enough." Everyone turned. The 72-year-old woman walked slowly to the front of the room, her cane clicking against the floor. She climbed the 2 steps to the stage and took the microphone from a startled Bradley. "My husband was a veteran," she said. "World War II. He came home with nightmares that lasted until the day he died. He drank too much. He couldn't hold a job for the first 5 years. And this town," she paused, letting the silence build, "this town almost destroyed him." No one spoke. They called him crazy, damaged, a burden. They whispered behind our backs and crossed the street when they saw us coming. His own family told me to leave him before he dragged me down. Margaret's voice hardened. But one man, one single man, looked past all of that. He gave my husband a job when no one else would. He sat with him through the nightmares. He treated him like a human being instead of a problem to be solved. That man became mayor of this town eventually. He taught me that you judge a community not by how it treats its best, but by how it treats its worst. She looked directly at Bradley. What happened to that community, Thomas? What happened to the town that lifted people up instead of throwing them away? Bradley's face had gone pale. Margaret, that was a different time. No, it was this town. These same streets, these same families. She turned to face the crowd. I'm ashamed of what I'm hearing tonight. Ashamed of the fear and the judgment and the willingness to destroy a man you don't even know. We're trying to protect our community, someone called out. From what? A man who can't walk? A man who has no family, no money, no one in the world who cares whether he lives or dies? Margaret shook her head. The only thing you're protecting is your own comfort, your own sense of superiority, your own need to believe that bad things only happen to bad people. She handed the microphone back to Bradley. My granddaughter has been visiting that man every day, and I thank God she has, because someone in this family needs to remember what it means to be a decent human being. Margaret walked off the stage and out of the building without looking back. The room sat in stunned silence. Emma followed her mother-in-law into the parking lot, her heart pounding. Margaret, not now. The older woman's voice was thick. I need a minute. They stood together in the darkness, listening to the muffled sounds of the meeting continuing inside. After a long moment, Margaret spoke again. Your father-in-law would be proud of Lily. He would be proud of you. I should have spoken up sooner. I should have said something when the whispers started. Margaret turned to face Emma. That man in the hospital, Stone, he reminds me of William. The same lost look, the same walls, the same desperate need to believe someone might actually care. Lily sees it too. Lily sees everything, just like her father. Margaret's eyes glistened. James would have done the same thing, you know. He would have been the first one to help. Emma felt tears threatening. I know. Don't let them win. Margaret gripped her arm with surprising strength. Whatever it takes, don't let them throw that man away like they threw away so many others. I don't know how to stop them. You'll figure it out. You always do. Margaret released her arm and started walking toward her car. And Emma? Yes? Lily's piggy bank, the one James gave her. She's been counting it. Emma froze. What? I've seen her. At night when she thinks no one's watching. She dumps it out on her bed and counts every penny. She's been doing it all week. Why would she? But Margaret was already getting into her car, leaving Emma alone with a terrible, wonderful suspicion. The hospital board met the following Monday. Emma wasn't supposed to be there. Staff members weren't invited to board meetings, especially not staff members who had become personally involved with the patient under discussion. But Dr. Chen had accidentally left the conference room door cracked, and Emma found herself standing in the hallway, listening. The current total is $91,422. That was Brenda Morrison's voice. Flat, professional, final. And he has no means of repayment? Mayor Bradley. None. No insurance, no assets, no family. Then I don't see why we're having this discussion. That voice belonged to Richard Copeland, who owned the biggest construction company in town. Transfer him. Get him out. The question is where to transfer him, Dr. Chen's voice now. His condition is still fragile. A long transport could what? Kill him? Copeland laughed. Would that really be the worst outcome? Silence. Emma's hands trembled with rage. I'm not saying we want him dead, Copeland continued. I'm saying we're not responsible for his choices. He ran a red light. He crashed. He doesn't have insurance. That's not our problem. He's a human being, Dr. Chen said quietly. He's a liability. Bradley's voice was smooth, reasonable. I've spoken with a facility in Denver. They're willing to take him as a charity case. We arrange transport, wash our hands of the situation, and move on. And if he dies in transport, then that's unfortunate but unavoidable. Emma couldn't listen anymore. She pushed away from the wall and walked blindly down the hallway, her vision blurred with tears. They were going to do it. They were going to pack him up like unwanted furniture and ship him off to die alone in some underfunded charity hospital in Denver. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. She found herself outside room 217. Through the window, she could see Marcus sitting up in bed, staring at the wall. His face was blank, empty, the face of a man who had stopped hoping. He knew. Of course he knew. Word traveled fast in hospitals. Emma pushed open the door. Marcus looked up. "You heard?" "I heard. Denver, some kind of charity facility." His voice was hollow. "At least it's not the street, I guess." "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is." He met her eyes, and for the first time she saw complete surrender. "Emma, I appreciate everything you've done, everything Lily's done, but this is how it ends. This is how it always ends for people like me." "People like you?" "Broken people, throwaway people, people who used up all their second chances a long time ago." Emma walked to his bedside. "You haven't used up anything. I've been a Marine, a husband, a father, a criminal, and I've failed at all of it." Marcus's voice cracked. "My son is 12 years old, and he doesn't even know my face anymore. My ex-wife remarried a dentist who coaches Little League. I've spent the last 5 years riding with a motorcycle gang because it was the only place I felt like I belonged. And then I couldn't even do that right. What happened? With the Hells Angels?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "They wanted me to hurt someone," he said finally. "A kid, 16 years old. He'd gotten mixed up with a rival gang, owed some money. They wanted to make an example. And you refused." "I refused," he laughed bitterly. "First time in years I'd actually stood up for something. And look where it got me. Running for my life. Crashed on some random street. Dying alone in a hospital full of people who wish I'd never existed. Lily doesn't wish that. Lily's 7. She doesn't know any better. Lily knows better than all of us." Marcus looked at her. Really looked. For the first time since she'd entered the room. "Why do you keep fighting for me?" "Because someone has to." Emma sat down on the edge of his bed. "Because my husband fought alone, and I couldn't save him. Because my daughter sees something in you that's worth saving, and I refuse to let her be disappointed. You can't stop the board. Watch me." "Emma, I don't know how yet, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way to make this town see you the way Lily sees you." She took his hand, the hand that wasn't broken, and squeezed it. "You're not a throwaway person, Marcus. You're not garbage. You're a man who refused to hurt a child, even when it cost you everything. That's not nothing. That's everything." Marcus stared at their joined hands. "I haven't held anyone's hand in years," he whispered. "Then it's about time you started." They sat there in silence, two broken people holding on to each other in a world that had decided they didn't matter. Outside the window, the sun was setting over Riverside, and somewhere in a small house across town, a 7-year-old girl was counting the contents of a pink ceramic piggy bank, 1 penny at a time. Emma got home at 8 o'clock to find Lily sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by coins. Pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, carefully sorted into piles. A notebook beside her with numbers written in her careful, childish handwriting. Pinky the piggy bank sat empty on the carpet. "Lily, what are you doing?" "Counting." Lily didn't look up. "I have $2,847. Emma's heart stopped. "Baby, why are you counting your money?" "Because Mr. Marcus needs it." "What?" Lily finally looked up. Her blue eyes were serious, determined, impossibly old for a 7-year-old face. "Mrs. Morrison came to see him. I heard her through the door. She said he owes $91,000. That's a lot of money." "Lily, sweetie, your money won't." I know it's not enough. Lily's voice was patient, like she was explaining something obvious to a slow adult. But it's something. It's all I have. And Mr. Marcus has nobody. He told me he doesn't have a mama or a daddy or anyone. Baby, you've been saving that money for years. You wanted to buy a star for Daddy. I know. Lily's lower lip trembled slightly. But Daddy's already in heaven. He doesn't need a star. Mr. Marcus is still here. He needs help. Emma felt her legs give out. She sank to the floor beside her daughter, pulling her into a tight embrace. Lily, Daddy would want me to help him. I asked Daddy last night, and he said yes. Daddy can't. Emma stopped herself. What did he say? He said that helping people is more important than anything. He said that's why he went to the war, because he wanted to help the people who couldn't help themselves. Lily pulled back, looking up at her mother. Mr. Marcus can't help himself, Mama, so I have to help him. It's what Daddy would do. Emma couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at her daughter. This beautiful, impossible child who carried her father's heart in a body that would never know him. You're sure? She finally managed. You're absolutely sure you want to give up your star money? I'm sure, Lily nodded firmly. Can you take me to the hospital tomorrow? I want to give Pinky to Mr. Marcus myself. Emma thought about the board meeting, about the transfer to Denver, about the odds stacked impossibly against them. She thought about her husband, dying alone because no one would reach out. She thought about Margaret standing in front of 200 people and demanding better. And she thought about her daughter sitting on the floor surrounded by $2,847 in coins, ready to give everything she had to a stranger. Maybe it wouldn't work. Maybe nothing would change. But maybe, just maybe, a 7-year-old girl with a pink piggy bank could do what no one else had managed. Maybe she could remind a whole town what it meant to be human. Okay, Emma said, wiping her eyes. Tomorrow, we'll go together. Lily smiled, and Emma felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The morning came too fast and too slow at the same time. Emma woke at 5, unable to sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios in her head. What would the hospital say? What would Marcus say? What would happen when $2,847 met a $91,000 debt? Nothing. That's what would happen. Nothing that mattered financially. But Lily didn't understand money. Lily understood hearts. And maybe that was exactly what this situation needed. At 6:30, she heard small footsteps in the hallway. Lily appeared in her doorway, already dressed in her yellow sunflower dress, the one her grandmother had made, the one she only wore for special occasions. She had Pinky clutched against her chest, and her face held the solemn determination of a soldier going into battle. I'm ready, Mama. Emma sat up. Baby, it's early. The hospital doesn't allow visitors until... I know, but I wanted to be ready. Lily walked to the bed and climbed up beside her mother. Mama, are you scared? A little. Me too. Lily leaned her head against Emma's shoulder. But Daddy says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you're scared. Emma wrapped her arm around her daughter. Your daddy was very wise. I know. That's why I talk to him every night. Lily was quiet for a moment. Do you think Mr. Marcus talks to anyone at night? I don't know, sweetie. I don't think he does. I think he's been alone for a really long time. Lily looked up at her mother. That's why I have to help him, because everyone needs someone to talk to, even grown-ups. Emma kissed the top of her daughter's head. How did you get so smart? Daddy, Lily said simply, and you. They stayed like that until the sun finished rising, mother and daughter holding on to each other, preparing for whatever came next. The hospital was quiet when they arrived at 8 o'clock. Emma had called ahead, asking Dr. Chen to make sure Marcus was awake and that they wouldn't be interrupted. He'd agreed without asking questions, which told her he already knew something was coming. The walk from the parking lot to room 217 felt like miles. Emma held Lily's hand the entire way. She could feel her daughter's pulse racing through her small fingers, could see the way she clutched Pinky tighter with each step. "You okay?" Emma asked as they approached the door. Lily nodded. "I practiced what I'm going to say. In the mirror this morning." "What are you going to say?" "I don't know yet. The words in my head are different from the words in my heart." Lily looked up at her mother. "Daddy says to always follow your heart." Emma's throat tightened. "Then that's what you should do." She pushed open the door. Marcus was sitting up in bed, clearly expecting them. Dr. Chen stood in the corner, trying to look casual and failing completely. The room felt charged with something, anticipation maybe, or destiny. "Hey, Lily," Marcus's voice was gentle. "Your mom said you wanted to talk to me." Lily walked forward slowly, still holding Pinky. She stopped at the foot of his bed and stood there for a long moment, just looking at him. Marcus waited. Emma waited. Dr. Chen waited. The whole world seemed to wait. "Mr. Marcus," Lily finally said, "I heard Mrs. Morrison talking about your money problem." Marcus glanced at Emma, then back at Lily. "Yeah, I heard about that too. She said you owe $91,000. That's more than a car. That's almost as much as a house." "It is. And she said they're going to send you away to a different hospital because you can't pay." Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's the plan." Lily took a deep breath, the kind of breath that comes before jumping off a diving board or walking into a dark room or saying something that will change everything. Then she walked to his bedside and placed Pinky on the table next to him. "This is Pinky," she said. "My daddy gave her to me before he went to the war. He said I should save money for something important, something that really matters." Marcus stared at the piggy bank. "Lily, I've been saving for 3 years. Every birthday I asked for money instead of toys. Every time I helped Mama with chores, she gave me quarters. Every penny I found on the ground, I put in Pinky." Lily's voice was steady, but Emma could see her hands shaking. "I have $2,847. Lily, that's—" "I was going to buy a star," Lily cut him off. "You can do that, did you know? You can buy a star and name it whatever you want. I was going to name my star after Daddy, the James Anderson star, so he could have his own place in the sky." Marcus's face crumpled. "I can't take your star money. I want you to have it. You don't understand. That money, your Daddy's already in heaven." Lily's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. "He doesn't need a star. He can see all the stars whenever he wants. But you're still here. You're alive. And you need help. $2,000 won't—" "I know it's not enough." Lily reached out and took Marcus's hand, the one that wasn't broken, and held it between both of hers. "I know 91,000 is way bigger than 2,000. Mama explained math to me, but this is all I have. Everything I have. And I want you to have it because everyone deserves to have someone care about them. Everyone deserves to be helped, even if you think you don't, even if the whole town thinks you don't." Marcus couldn't speak. His face twisted with emotions Emma couldn't name. Pain and gratitude and shame and wonder, all mixed together in something she'd never seen before. "Why?" he finally managed. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." Lily tilted her head like the question confused her. "But I do know you. I know you're sad. I know you're lonely. I know you're scared." She paused. "I know you're good." "I'm not good." "Yes, you are. You just forgot." Lily squeezed his hand. "My daddy forgot sometimes too. He came home from the war and he forgot that he was good. He thought he was broken and nobody wanted him. But Mama loved him anyway, and I loved him even though I was just a baby. Because that's what you do when someone's hurting. You love them until they remember who they are." Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now. He didn't try to hide them. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "Everyone deserves someone." Lily reached up and touched his face, wiping away a tear with her small thumb. That's what I think. That's what Daddy would think. And that's why I want you to have Pinky, because you shouldn't be alone. Nobody should be alone." The room was absolutely silent. Dr. Chen had turned away, his shoulders shaking. Emma stood frozen, watching her daughter do something that no adult in this town had been able to do. Reach past the walls, past the judgment, past the fear, and touch the human being underneath. Marcus pulled Lily into an awkward, one-armed hug, burying his face against her shoulder. "Thank you," he sobbed. "Thank you." Lily hugged him back, patting his shoulder blade like she was comforting a much larger child. "You're welcome, Mr. Marcus. You're going to be okay, I promise." Emma wiped her own tears and stepped forward. "Lily, baby, we should let Mr. Marcus rest." "Wait." Marcus pulled back from the hug, looking at Emma with red-rimmed eyes. "I need to tell you something, both of you. You don't have to. I want to. I need to." He took a shaky breath. "I haven't been honest about who I am, about what I've done." Emma felt her stomach tighten. "Marcus, I have a son." The words came out like a confession. "Ethan, he's 12 years old. I haven't seen him in 4 years because his mother, my ex-wife, took him away when she finally gave up on me. I was too messed up, too broken, too dangerous." Lily was listening intently. "I joined the Hells Angels because I had nowhere else to go. After the Marines, after the divorce, after everything fell apart, they were the only ones who would take me. And I stayed because it felt like family, like brotherhood, like something that made sense." "What changed?" Emma asked quietly. "There was a kid, 16 years old. He'd gotten mixed up with a rival gang, owed money he couldn't pay. The club wanted to make an example. They wanted me to—" Marcus stopped, swallowing hard. "They wanted me to hurt him, really hurt him, send a message. But you didn't." "I couldn't. I looked at that kid and I saw my son. I saw what Ethan might become if he went down the wrong path. I couldn't be the monster that destroyed another boy's life." Marcus laughed bitterly. "So I walked away, left everything, started running." "Running where?" "Phoenix. There's a veterans center there. A guy I served with, Carlos, he went through it 5 years ago, said it saved his life. I thought maybe—" He shook his head. "I thought maybe I could start over, be someone different, someone my son wouldn't be ashamed of." Emma sat down on the edge of the bed. "You were trying to get better." "Trying, failing, same as always." Marcus looked at the piggy bank still sitting on his bedside table. "And then I crashed in your town, and your daughter started visiting me, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe there was still something in me worth saving." Lily climbed onto the bed beside him, completely ignoring hospital protocols. "There is. I told you, you're good. You just forgot." Marcus stared at her. "You really believe that?" "I really believe that," Lily nodded firmly. "And I'm never wrong about people. Mama says so." Marcus looked at Emma, seeking confirmation. "She's never been wrong," Emma said. "Not once." Something shifted in Marcus's face. Something that had been locked away for years, decades maybe, finally cracked open. "I want to be better," he said. "I want to be the person your daughter thinks I am." "Then be that person." Emma reached out and took his other hand. "It's not too late. The hospital board. Let me worry about the hospital board." "Emma, you can't." "I said let me worry about it." Her voice was firm. "Lily just gave you everything she has. The least I can do is fight for you." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, but Lily cut him off. "Mama's really stubborn," she said matter-of-factly. "You should probably just say okay." Despite everything, the tears, the confessions, the weight of impossible odds, Marcus laughed. It was a real laugh, broken and rusty from disuse, but real. "Okay," he said. "Okay." The door burst open. Brenda Morrison stood in the doorway, her face pale with shock. Behind her, Emma could see several nurses peering around the corner. their expressions a mixture of curiosity and alarm. "What is going on here?" Emma stood up quickly. "Mrs. Morrison, this isn't—" "I received a call from the front desk saying that your daughter had brought a large amount of cash into a patient's room." Brenda's eyes landed on Pinky. "Is that true?" Lily lifted her chin. "I'm giving Mr. Marcus my piggy bank. It's $2,847. I saved it myself." Brenda stared at the child like she'd grown a second head. "You're giving a patient your savings?" "Yes, ma'am, to help with his bill. You realize that won't even cover 2% of what he owes." "I know, but it's all I have, and I wanted to help." Something flickered in Brenda's professional mask, something human. "This is highly irregular," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. "It's a gift," Emma said, "from my daughter. There's nothing irregular about kindness." Brenda stood there, frozen between protocol and something she clearly hadn't expected to feel. Emma watched the conflict play across her face. The financial officer versus the human being. The rules versus the reality of a 7-year-old girl offering everything she had to a stranger. "I'll need to document this," Brenda finally said, "for the records." "Fine, document whatever you want." Brenda nodded stiffly. Then, so quietly that Emma almost missed it, she said, "That's a remarkable daughter you have." She turned and walked out before Emma could respond. "Doctor," Chen stepped forward, clearing his throat. "I should check Marcus's vitals. Give you all a moment." He was lying. He checked vitals an hour ago, but Emma appreciated the excuse. He moved to Marcus's bedside, making a show of examining charts while carefully not meeting anyone's eyes. "Dr. Chen," Lily said. "Yes. Do you think Mr. Marcus is good?" The doctor paused. He looked at Marcus, at the tears still drying on his face, at the broken arm and the broken ribs, and the broken spirit that was slowly, miraculously, starting to heal. "I think," Dr. Chen said carefully, "that people are more than the worst thing they've ever done, and I think Mr. Stone is finally figuring that out." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm trying. That's all any of us can do." The door opened again. This time it was Margaret Anderson, Emma's mother-in-law, looking like she'd run all the way from her house. Her white hair had escaped its usually severe bun, and she was breathing hard. "I heard," she panted. "Helen Brooks called me. Said Lily was at the hospital doing something crazy." "Grandma!" Lily jumped off the bed and ran to her. "I gave Mr. Marcus my star money." Margaret looked from Lily to Marcus to Emma, taking in the scene with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Did you now?" $2,847. It's all I had. That's a lot of money for a little girl. "I know, but Mr. Marcus needs it more than I do." Lily tugged on her grandmother's hand. "Do you want to meet him? He's really nice. He's just sad because he doesn't have anyone." Margaret allowed herself to be led to the bedside. She looked down at Marcus with an expression that Emma couldn't read. "So you're the man my granddaughter has decided to save?" Marcus met her gaze. "Yes, ma'am." "She tells me you're a Marine." "Yes, ma'am, 2 tours in Iraq." "My husband was in World War II. Came back broken in ways nobody understood. This town almost destroyed him." "I heard. Emma told me what you said at the town meeting." Margaret's eyebrows rose. "Did she? You stood up for me, a stranger, someone you'd never met." Marcus's voice was rough. "I don't know how to thank you for that." "Don't thank me. Thank my husband. He taught me that a person's worth isn't determined by their worst moments." Margaret paused. "He also taught me that some people are worth fighting for, even when the whole world says they're not." "And you think I'm one of those people?" "I think my granddaughter believes you are. And Lily has her father's heart. She doesn't give it easily, but when she doesn't give it wrong." Marcus's eyes welled up again. "I don't know what I did to deserve any of this." "That's the point." Margaret sat down in the visitor's chair with the air of someone who intended to stay. "You don't have to deserve kindness. You just have to accept it." The room fell into a comfortable silence. Emma watched her mother-in-law settle in, watched Lily climb back onto Marcus's bed like it was the most natural thing in the world, watched Dr. Chen pretending to check monitors while actually wiping his eyes. This was what she'd been fighting for, she realized. Not just for Marcus, but for this. For proof that people could still surprise you. That kindness could still win. That a 7-year-old with a piggy bank could do what politicians and businessmen and entire communities couldn't. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and felt her blood run cold. It was a text from Patricia Wells. "You should check Facebook. Now." Emma stepped into the hallway and opened the app. The top post on her feed was from an account she didn't recognize. A profile with the Hells Angels logo as its picture. The post had been shared hundreds of times already, and it contained a photo. A photo of Marcus Stone. Under it were 3 words that made Emma's hands shake. "We found you." Emma stared at the screen, her mind racing. The Hells Angels. They'd found him. After 6 months of running, 6 months of hiding, they tracked him to a hospital in a tiny Colorado town. And now everyone knew. She looked through the comments. Most were from accounts she didn't recognize. Biker accounts, gang accounts, people she'd never seen before. But some were local. "I knew he was trouble. This proves it. He's a criminal. We need to get this guy out of our town before his friends come looking for him." The post had been up for 2 hours. How had she not seen it? How had no one told her? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Dr. Chen. "Board meeting in 30 minutes. Emergency session. They've seen the post." Emma felt the walls closing in. Everything they'd built this morning, the hope, the connection, the possibility that things could be different, was about to be destroyed. The board would see that post and use it as the final nail in Marcus's coffin. They'd transfer him today, maybe within the hour. And if the Hells Angels knew where he was, a transfer to Denver wouldn't be a rescue, it would be a delivery. She walked back into the room, trying to keep her face neutral. "Mama?" Lily looked up immediately. "What's wrong?" Of course she knew. Lily always knew. "Nothing, baby. I just need to step out for a bit." "You're lying." Lily's voice was matter-of-fact. "Your face does that thing when you're lying." Marcus was watching her too. "What happened?" Emma hesitated. She didn't want to destroy this moment, didn't want to watch the hope drain out of Marcus's eyes. But he deserved to know. "The Hells Angels posted about you online. They know you're here." Marcus went pale. "How?" "I don't know. Someone must have seen you at the accident. Word travels." Emma swallowed hard. "The hospital board is meeting in 30 minutes. Emergency session. They're going to transfer me. They're going to try. They should." Marcus's voice was flat. "If the club knows where I am, this town is in danger. Everyone in this room is in danger. You need to let them move me." "No," Lily grabbed his arm. "No, you're not leaving." "Lily, you don't understand." "You're not leaving." Her voice rose. "You just got here. You just started being happy. You can't leave now." "If I stay, bad people might come. People who want to hurt me. They might hurt your mama. They might hurt you. Then we'll protect you." Lily's jaw set in that stubborn line Emma knew so well. That's what families do. They protect each other. "I'm not your family." "Yes, you are. I decided. You're my family now." Marcus looked at Emma helplessly. "She can't. You can't let her." "Lily." Emma knelt beside her daughter. "Mr. Marcus is right. There are dangerous people who—" "I know, but we can't just give up." Lily's eyes were filling with tears. "If we give up on him, then the bad people win. And Daddy always said you should never let the bad people win. Sometimes there's nothing we can do, baby. There's always something." Lily pulled away from her mother and turned to face Marcus directly. "You said you wanted to be better. You said you wanted to be the person I think you are. Well, that person doesn't run away. That person stands up. That person fights. I've been fighting my whole life. Then fight for yourself this time. Fight for a chance to be happy. Fight for me. Lily's voice broke. I gave you everything I have. Please don't waste it. The room was absolutely still. Marcus stared at the 7-year-old girl who had somehow become his conscience, his hope, his reason to keep breathing. And something shifted in his face. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, what? Okay, I'll fight. He looked at Emma. Tell me about this board meeting. What do we do? Emma felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. I don't know yet, but we have 30 minutes to figure it out. Then we better start planning. Margaret stood up from her chair. I didn't speak in front of the whole town just to watch this all fall apart. What do we know about the board members? There are 7 of them. 3 are definitely on Bradley's side. 2 are neutral. 2 might be sympathetic. We need the sympathetic ones plus 1 neutral to block the transfer? At least. But they'd need a reason to go against the mayor. They have a reason. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Chen. I've been documenting Marcus's case from the beginning. His military service, his injuries, his progress. If we can present him as a veteran who deserves treatment, not a criminal who needs to be removed, that's not enough, Emma shook her head. The Facebook post changes everything. They'll say he's attracting danger. Then we need to show them he's worth the risk. Margaret's voice was sharp. We need to show them that throwing him away would make this town exactly what I accuse them of being. How? Margaret smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who had survived a lot and learned a few things along the way. We give them witnesses, people who've seen what's happening here, people who can speak to who Marcus Stone really is. There's no time to organize that. There doesn't have to be an organization. There just has to be a willingness to stand up. Margaret pulled out her phone. Helen Brooks owes me a favor. So does Martha Henderson. And Pastor David Miller has been looking for a chance to prove his church actually believes in redemption. That's 3 people. 3 people who know 3 more people each. Margaret was already dialing. In 30 minutes, I can have a dozen witnesses in that boardroom, maybe more. Emma stared at her mother-in-law with new respect. You're serious? I didn't spend 72 years in this town without learning how it works. Margaret put the phone to her ear. Helen, it's Margaret. I need you to make some calls, now. For the next 20 minutes, the room became a command center. Margaret worked the phones like a general coordinating troops. Dr. Chen pulled together Marcus's medical records, highlighting his veteran status and his progress. Emma drafted talking points for whoever showed up to speak. And through it all, Lily sat beside Marcus on the bed, holding his hand. Are you scared? She asked him quietly. Terrified. Me too. She squeezed his fingers. But I'm glad we're scared together. Being scared alone is the worst. You're too young to know that. I learned it when Daddy died. Lily's voice was matter-of-fact. Mama was scared alone for a long time. Then Grandma moved closer and we were scared together. It was better. Marcus looked at this impossible child who had somehow adopted him into her broken family. Your daddy would be proud of you. I know, he tells me every night. You really believe he talks to you? Don't you believe people in heaven can see us? Marcus thought about it, about the brothers he'd lost in Iraq, the friends who'd never made it home, about his own father, who died when Marcus was 19, disappointed in the son who'd never quite measured up. I don't know, he admitted. I never really thought about it. You should think about it. Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. It helps. Knowing someone's watching. Knowing someone cares even when you can't see them. Yeah, Marcus's voice was rough. I bet it does. The door opened. Emma looked up from her notes, expecting to see one of Margaret's witnesses. Instead, Mayor Thomas Bradley walked in. He took in the scene. Marcus in bed, Lily at his side, Margaret on the phone, Dr. Chen organizing papers, Emma standing like a guard at the door, and his expression shifted from surprise to something colder. "I see you've been busy." "Mayor Bradley," Emma stepped forward, "the board meeting isn't for another 10 minutes. I came early to discuss options." His eyes moved to Marcus. "Mr. Stone, I heard about the Facebook post." Marcus met his gaze. "So did I." "Then you understand why this situation has become untenable. Your former associates know you're here. They've made that public knowledge. Every minute you remain in this hospital, you put the staff and patients at risk." "With respect, sir, they don't want anything to do with this hospital. They want me. And they'll come through us to get you." Bradley's voice hardened. "I have a responsibility to this community. I can't allow—" "You have a responsibility to be better." Lily's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Bradley turned to look at her. For a moment, his political mask slipped, and Emma saw genuine surprise underneath. "Excuse me? My grandma said you're supposed to help people. That's why you became mayor, to help people." Lily slid off the bed and walked toward him, small and fierce and absolutely unafraid. "Mr. Marcus needs help. Why won't you help him?" "This is more complicated than you understand, young lady." "No, it's not." Lily shook her head. "It's really simple. He's hurt. He's alone. He needs someone to care about him. That's not complicated. That's just being a good person." Bradley stared at her. "You're the girl with the piggy bank." "I'm Lily Anderson. My daddy was Captain James Anderson. He died in Afghanistan. He was a hero." Something flickered in Bradley's face. "I knew your father. He was a good man." "He was, and he would help Mr. Marcus if he was here. He would help because that's what good people do." Lily looked up at the mayor with those impossible blue eyes. "Are you a good person, Mayor Bradley?" The question hung in the air. Emma held her breath, and Thomas Bradley, for the first time in the conversation, didn't seem to have an answer. The silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. Mayor Thomas Bradley stood frozen, his political composure cracking under the weight of a 7-year-old's question. Emma watched his face cycle through emotions: surprise, irritation, something that might have been shame, before settling into careful neutrality. "I like to think I am," he finally said. "Then prove it." Lily didn't flinch. "Help Mr. Marcus." Before Bradley could respond, Margaret stepped forward, phone still in hand. "Thomas, there are people gathering in the lobby, people who want to speak at the board meeting." "What people?" "Community members, veterans, church folks, people who've heard what's happening and want to have their say." Bradley's face tightened. "This is a hospital board meeting, not a town hall." "Then make it a town hall." Margaret's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Unless you're afraid of what your constituents might say." "I'm not afraid of anything." "Then let them in. Let them speak. Let democracy work the way it's supposed to." The two of them stared at each other, the mayor who controlled the town and the elderly woman who had nothing left to lose. Emma could feel the power shifting in the room, could sense Bradley calculating the political cost of refusing versus the political cost of allowing. "Fine," he said finally, "but this doesn't change the facts. Mr. Stone is a liability. The Facebook post proves that some people are vindictive," Dr. Chen interrupted. "It doesn't prove anything about who Marcus Stone is now. He was a member of a criminal organization. I was a member of the United States Marine Corps." Marcus's voice cut through the argument. Everyone turned to look at him. He had pushed himself into a sitting position, his face pale but determined. "I served 2 tours in Iraq. I was awarded the Bronze Star for pulling 3 wounded men out of an ambush while taking fire. I've killed people who were trying to kill Americans, and I've held my friends while they died in my arms." Bradley said nothing. "After that, I came home broken. My marriage fell apart. I lost my son. I spent 3 years trying to drink myself to death because the VA waitlist was 18 months long and I couldn't afford private therapy." Marcus's voice was steady, but Emma could see his hands shaking. I joined the Hells Angels because they were the only ones who would take me. They gave me a brotherhood, a purpose, a reason to wake up in the morning. And yeah, I did things I'm not proud of. But when they asked me to hurt a 16-year-old kid, I drew the line. That doesn't erase. I'm not asking you to erase anything. Marcus met Bradley's eyes directly. I'm asking you to see me, not the jacket, not the Facebook post, not the worst moments of my life. Me, the guy who's lying in this bed trying to figure out if he still has a chance to be something other than a disappointment. The room was absolutely silent. Lily walked back to Marcus's bedside and took his hand. He's good, she said simply. I told you, he just forgot for a while. Bradley looked at the little girl holding the biker's hand. He looked at Margaret, still gripping her phone like a weapon. He looked at Emma, standing guard like she was ready to fight anyone who came through that door. And something in his face shifted. The board meeting starts in 5 minutes, he said quietly. I suggest you all come prepared. He turned and walked out. Emma released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Did that work? Dr. Chen asked. I don't know. Margaret was already moving toward the door. But we're about to find out. The boardroom was standing room only. Emma had expected a dozen people, maybe 20. Instead, she counted over 50 crowded into a space designed for 30. They lined the walls, filled the corners, spilled out into the hallway with the door propped open so they could hear. She recognized some of them. Helen Brooks, Margaret's neighbor, who ran the church bake sale every year. Pastor David Miller, looking uncomfortable in his Sunday suit on a Wednesday afternoon. Tommy Reeves, the delivery driver whose truck Marcus had swerved to avoid, standing near the back with his uncle. But there were others she didn't know. An older man in a VFW cap, a woman with a toddler on her hip, a group of young men who looked like they might work construction. Word had spread. Somehow, in less than 30 minutes, word had spread. Marcus was wheeled in by Dr. Chen, his hospital bed replaced by a wheelchair that made him look smaller than he was. Lily walked beside him, holding his hand, refusing to let go even when a board member suggested it might be inappropriate. She stays, Marcus said, or I don't speak. The board member backed down. Mayor Bradley sat at the head of the long table, flanked by 6 other board members. Emma recognized Richard Copeland, the construction company owner who'd suggested Marcus's death might not be the worst outcome. She recognized Brenda Morrison, the financial officer, her face carefully neutral. The others were business people, hospital administrators, people who made decisions about money and policy and who deserved care. This emergency session is now in order, Bradley said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. We're here to discuss the case of Marcus Stone, patient in room 217. The floor is open for discussion. Richard Copeland spoke first. I don't see what there is to discuss. The man has a $91,000 debt, no means of payment, and he's now attracted the attention of a criminal organization. For the safety of our staff and patients, he needs to be transferred immediately. Transferred where? Dr. Chen stood up. The facility in Denver is understaffed and underfunded. Transferring a patient in Mr. Stone's condition would be medically inadvisable. That's not our problem. It absolutely is our problem. We took an oath to do no harm. Sending this man to a place where he'll receive substandard care, or worse, putting him on the road where his former associates might intercept him, that's harm. We can't keep every charity case who wanders through our doors. He's not a charity case. Emma stepped forward, her voice cutting through the murmurs. He's a veteran, a decorated Marine, a man who served his country and got left behind when he came home. He's also a criminal, Copeland shot back. He's a man who refused to hurt a child. Emma's voice rose. That's what got him kicked out of the Hells Angels. He stood up for a 16-year-old kid when his so-called brothers wanted to make an example. That's who he is. That's the man you're trying to throw away. The room erupted in murmurs. Emma could hear fragments. Didn't know that. Makes a difference. Still dangerous, but couldn't tell which way opinion was swaying. Order, Bradley's voice cut through the noise. We'll hear from community members who've requested to speak. Pastor Miller? Pastor David Miller stood up, smoothing his jacket nervously. I don't know Mr. Stone personally, but I know what my faith teaches. It teaches that we're called to care for the least of these. The hungry, the sick, the imprisoned, the stranger. He paused. This man is a stranger in our community. He's sick. He's alone. How we treat him says more about us than it does about him. Thank you, Pastor. Bradley's voice was neutral. Next, the older man in the VFW cap stood up. Name's Walter Briggs. I served in Vietnam, 1968 to 1970. Came home to people spitting on me at the airport. Couldn't get a job. Couldn't get help. My own family looked at me like I was broken goods. His voice cracked slightly. It took me 15 years to put my life back together. 15 years of struggling alone because nobody wanted to deal with a messed up vet. He looked directly at Marcus. I don't know what you've done, son. I don't know where you've been, but I know what it's like to come home from war and find out your country doesn't want you anymore. And I know that every man deserves a second chance, even the ones who've made mistakes. Marcus's jaw tightened. He nodded once, a gesture of recognition between two men who'd seen things civilians couldn't understand. Anyone else? Bradley asked. Tommy Reeves raised his hands shakily. The young delivery driver looked terrified, but he stepped forward anyway. I was driving the truck that day, the one he swerved to avoid. Tommy's voice was barely above a whisper. If he hadn't laid down his bike, he would have hit me head on. I'd probably be dead. My uncle's truck would have been destroyed. Instead, he took the hit himself. That was an accident, Copeland started. It wasn't an accident. Tommy's voice grew stronger. He had a choice, hit me or crash. He chose to crash. He chose to almost die so I wouldn't get hurt. He looked at Marcus with something like wonder. I didn't even know his name until yesterday, but he saved my life. Doesn't that count for something? The room fell silent. Emma watched the board members' faces, trying to read the shifting currents. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked moved. Brenda Morrison was staring at her tablet, but her expression had softened. Is there anyone else? Bradley asked. Lily stepped forward. Lily, honey, you don't have to. Emma reached for her daughter. I want to. Lily shook off her mother's hand and walked to the front of the room, small and fierce and utterly unafraid. She stood before the long table of adults, her yellow sundress bright against the institutional gray, her blonde braids slightly messy from the long morning. My name is Lily Anderson. I'm 7 years old. My daddy was Captain James Anderson, and he died in Afghanistan when I was 5. The room went absolutely still. I gave Mr. Marcus my piggy bank this morning, $2,847. I was saving it to buy a star for my daddy, so he could have his own place in the sky. Someone in the crowd made a small sound, a sob, quickly stifled. But Daddy's already in heaven. He doesn't need a star. He can see all the stars whenever he wants. Lily's voice was steady, but Emma could see tears gathering in her eyes. Mr. Marcus is still alive. He's still here, and he doesn't have anyone. She turned to look at Marcus, then back at the board. I know $2,000 isn't enough. I know he owes a lot more than that. But it's all I have. It's everything I have. And I wanted him to know that somebody cares, that somebody thinks he's worth helping. Lily took a deep breath. My mama says we judge a community by how it treats people who are hurting. My grandma says we should help people even when they can't help themselves. My daddy said that's why he became a soldier, to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. She looked directly at Mayor Bradley. Mr. Marcus can't protect himself right now. He's hurt and scared and alone. So it's our job to protect him. That's what good communities do. That's what good people do. She walked back to Marcus's wheelchair and took his hand again. I'm done now. The silence that followed was unlike anything Emma had ever experienced. It wasn't the silence of shock or the silence of disapproval. It was the silence of people being confronted with their own consciences. People who had to decide, right now, what kind of human beings they wanted to be. Mayor Bradley cleared his throat. Thank you, Lily. That was very eloquent. I meant every word. I know you did. Something shifted in Bradley's face, something that might have been the last crumbling of a political facade. The board will now deliberate. We'll announce our decision within the hour. Wait, Marcus's voice was hoarse. I want to say something. Bradley hesitated. Mr. Stone, you're not required to. I know, but I want to. Marcus looked at Emma, who nodded slightly. Then he turned his wheelchair to face the room full of strangers who would decide his fate. I've been a lot of things in my life. Marine, husband, father, drunk, criminal. I've made more mistakes than I can count. I've hurt people I loved and let down everyone who ever believed in me. His voice broke slightly, but he pushed through. I came to this town by accident. I wasn't planning to stay. I wasn't planning to become anyone's problem. I was just trying to get to Phoenix, to a place that helps veterans like me figure out how to be human again. He looked at Lily. Then this little girl started visiting me every day, bringing drawings and stories and asking questions nobody had asked me in years. Questions like, how are you feeling? And did you sleep okay? And do you want to see my butterfly picture? A few people in the crowd laughed softly. She didn't care that I looked scary. She didn't care about the jacket or the tattoos or what people were saying about me. She just saw a person who was alone, and she decided that wasn't right. Marcus's eyes moved to Emma. Her mother tried to save my life when nobody else would. Her grandmother stood up for me in front of the whole town. And this morning, Lily gave me everything she had. Her star money, her daddy's money. He turned back to the board. I don't know if I deserve that kind of kindness. I'm pretty sure I don't. But I know one thing. I want to. For the first time in years, I actually want to deserve something. I want to be the person that little girl thinks I am. He straightened in his wheelchair, ignoring the pain that flickered across his face. I'm not asking you to forgive my debt. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for a chance to stay in this town and prove that I can be different. I'll work off every penny I owe, however long it takes. I'll do whatever jobs nobody else wants. I'll volunteer. I'll contribute. I'll be a member of this community instead of just passing through. His voice hardened with determination. Because that little girl believes in me, and I'll be damned if I let her down. The room erupted. People were talking, crying, arguing, embracing. Emma saw Patricia Wells, the quilter who had called Marcus a criminal just days ago, wiping her eyes with a handkerchief. She saw Howard Jenkins, the insurance agent who had refused to help at the accident, staring at the floor like he wanted it to swallow him. She saw her mother-in-law standing in the corner, her face wet with tears but her chin held high. And she saw her daughter, still holding Marcus's hand, looking up at him with an expression of pure, uncomplicated love. Order! Bradley's voice barely cut through the noise. Order, please! Gradually, the room quieted. Bradley stood up from his seat at the head of the table. His face was unreadable as he looked out at the crowd, at the board members, at Marcus in his wheelchair. In my 30 years of public service, he said slowly, I have never seen anything like what happened in this room today. He paused. I came into this meeting prepared to authorize a transfer. I believed it was the right thing to do, for the hospital, for the community, for everyone involved. Emma felt her heart sink. But I've been reminded of something today, something I forgot a long time ago. Bradley's voice softened. I was reminded that we're not just administrators and business people and politicians. We're neighbors. We're supposed to take care of each other. He looked directly at Lily. A 7-year-old girl gave up everything she had to help a stranger. Everything. And she did it because she believed it was right. Not because it made financial sense. Not because it was politically convenient. Because it was right. Bradley turned to face the board. I'm calling for a motion to table the transfer indefinitely. Mr. Stone will remain at Riverside Community Hospital until he's medically ready for discharge. At that time, we'll work with community resources to establish a payment plan and support system for his continued recovery. Seconded, Brenda Morrison said quietly. All in favor? 4 hands went up, then 5, then 6. Richard Copeland sat alone, his hand down, his face red with fury. Motion passes, Bradley said. Mr. Stone stays. The room exploded. Emma found herself swept up in a wave of hugs and handshakes and tearful congratulations. Margaret was there, pulling her into a fierce embrace. Dr. Chen was there, pumping her hand with unprofessional enthusiasm. Strangers were there, people she'd never met, thanking her for something she wasn't entirely sure she'd done. Through it all, she kept her eyes on Lily. Her daughter stood beside Marcus's wheelchair, their hands still joined, watching the celebration with an expression of quiet satisfaction. We did it, Lily said simply. Marcus looked down at her with tears streaming freely down his face. You did it, kid. You did all of it. We did it together. Lily squeezed his hand. That's what families do. The crowd began to disperse, people filing out with promises to help, to donate, to be part of whatever came next. Emma made her way through the well-wishers until she reached Marcus and Lily. How do you feel? She asked him. Marcus shook his head, still dazed. I don't know. I don't have words. You don't need words. Emma reached out and touched his shoulder gently. You just need to keep your promise. Be the person she believes you are. I will. His voice was rough with emotion. I swear to God I will. I know you will. Lily nodded firmly. I'm never wrong about people. Despite everything, the stress, the fear, the impossible odds, Emma laughed. No, baby, you never are. The 3 of them stood there in the emptying boardroom, bound together by something none of them could name, but all of them could feel. Family, maybe, or hope, or just the simple, revolutionary act of choosing to care about each other when the world said they shouldn't. Whatever it was enough. It was more than enough. The celebration lasted for hours. Word spread through Riverside like wildfire. By evening, the hospital lobby was filled with people bringing food, flowers, donations. Someone had set up a card table with a jar marked Marcus Stone Recovery Fund, and by 8 o'clock, it held over $3,000 in cash and checks. Dr. Chen moved Marcus to a larger room to accommodate all the visitors. Nurses who had barely spoken to him before now stopped by to chat, to share stories, to treat him like a person instead of a problem. And through it all, Lily stayed. She sat in the corner of his room, coloring pictures, occasionally looking up to wave at visitors or accept praise for her bravery. She seemed completely unaffected by the attention, as if giving away her life savings and changing the course of a man's life was just a normal Tuesday activity. At 9 o'clock, Emma finally insisted on taking her home. But I want to stay with Mr. Marcus. Mr. Marcus needs to rest, and so do you. I'm not tired. Your eyes are closing while you argue with me. Lily yawned hugely, which undermined her position significantly. Fine. She walked to Marcus's bedside one last time. I'll come back tomorrow, and the next day, and every day until you're better. Marcus reached out and touched her cheek gently. I'll be here. Promise? Promise. Lily nodded, satisfied. Then she stood on tiptoe and kissed his forehead, the way Emma had seen her kiss her father's photograph every night before bed. Good night, Mr. Marcus. Good night, Lily. Emma took her daughter's hand and led her toward the door. At the threshold, she paused and looked back. Marcus was watching them go, his face illuminated by the soft glow of medical monitors, and the fairy lights someone had strung around his window. He looked exhausted, overwhelmed, but underneath it all, he looked like a man who had finally found something worth holding on to. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me when nobody else would." Emma smiled. "Thank Lily, I was just following her lead." "You raised her. You made her who she is. Her father made her who she is. I'm just trying not to mess it up." Marcus held her gaze. "You're not messing anything up, trust me. I know what messed up looks like." Emma laughed softly. "Get some rest, Marcus. Tomorrow's going to be busy." She turned and walked out with Lily, leaving him alone with his thoughts and his hope and his determination to become something better. Neither of them saw the black SUV parked across the street from the hospital. Neither of them noticed the man in the driver's seat, watching the building with cold, patient eyes. And neither of them heard the phone call he made as Emma's car pulled out of the parking lot. "Found him. Riverside Community Hospital, room 312. He's not going anywhere." A pause. "Yeah, I'm sure it's him. Stone." Another pause. "Understood. We'll be ready." The man hung up and continued watching. Inside the hospital, Marcus Stone slept peacefully for the first time in months. He didn't know that his past was about to catch up with him. He didn't know that the hope he'd finally found was about to be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. All he knew was that a 7-year-old girl believed in him, and for now, that was enough. The phone call came at 3 a.m. Emma bolted upright in bed, her heart hammering before she was fully awake. Her hand found the phone on autopilot, her voice thick with sleep and fear. "Hello? Emma, it's Robert Chen. You need to get to the hospital, now." "What happened? Is Marcus?" "Just come. Bring Lily if you have to. Don't leave her alone." The line went dead. Emma was out of bed and pulling on clothes before the fear had fully registered. She ran to Lily's room, scooped her sleeping daughter into her arms, grabbed her keys, and was in the car within 4 minutes. The drive to the hospital took 12 minutes, the longest 12 minutes of her life. Every worst-case scenario played through her mind. Marcus had taken a turn for the worse. There'd been complications from surgery. He'd had a stroke, a heart attack, an embolism. He was dying. He was dead. She didn't let herself think about the other possibility, the one that had been lurking in the back of her mind since she'd seen that Facebook post. The hospital parking lot was full of police cars. Emma's stomach dropped. She parked crookedly, not caring about the lines, and carried Lily, now awake and confused, through the emergency entrance. Dr. Chen was waiting for her just inside the doors. "What happened?" Emma demanded. 3 men showed up about an hour ago. They tried to get into Marcus's room." "Tried?" Security stopped them. There was a confrontation. One of the men had a knife. Dr. Chen's face was grim. "Nobody was seriously hurt, but Marcus, he heard everything. He's asking for you." "For me?" "For Lily, actually, but I figured you'd want to be there too." Emma looked down at her daughter, who was now fully awake and listening intently. "Mama, what's wrong with Mr. Marcus?" "I don't know yet, baby. Let's go find out." They followed Dr. Chen through the hospital corridors, past uniformed police officers and nervous-looking staff. The closer they got to Marcus's room, the more Emma's dread grew. The door was open. Marcus was sitting up in bed, his face pale but his eyes burning with an intensity Emma had never seen before. 2 police officers stood near the window, and Sheriff Daniel Hayes, a man Emma had known since childhood, was taking notes on a small pad. "Emma," Marcus's voice cracked with relief when he saw her. "Lily, thank God." Lily pulled free of her mother's arms and ran to his bedside. "Mr. Marcus, Dr. Chen said bad men came. Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, I'm fine." Marcus pulled her into an awkward, one-armed hug. "They didn't get anywhere near me." "But they wanted to hurt you." "They wanted to scare me. There's a difference." "No, there's not." Lily's voice was fierce. Wanting to hurt people and wanting to scare people are both bad. Despite everything, Marcus almost smiled. You're right. They're both bad. Sheriff Hayes cleared his throat. Mrs. Anderson, I'm going to need to ask Mr. Stone some questions. Private questions. You might want to take your daughter. She stays. Marcus's voice left no room for argument. She stays or I don't talk. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. Mr. Stone, given the nature of what we're discussing, I know exactly what we're discussing, and Lily has earned the right to be here. Marcus met Emma's eyes. If that's okay with her mother. Emma hesitated. Every protective instinct screamed at her to take Lily away, to shield her from whatever darkness was coming. But she looked at her daughter, brave, stubborn, impossibly wise, and made a decision. She can stay, but if things get too intense, I'll handle it, Marcus said quietly. I promise. Sheriff Hayes sighed and flipped to a new page in his notebook. All right, Mr. Stone, let's start from the beginning. Who were those men, and why do they want you dead? Marcus's story took almost an hour to tell. He told them about joining the Hells Angels, about the years of riding, the brotherhood, the sense of belonging he'd been desperate to find. He told them about the drugs he'd run, the fights he'd been in, the lines he'd crossed because he'd stopped caring about lines. And he told them about Danny Reyes, 16 years old, mixed up with a rival gang over a gambling debt. The club's leadership had decided to make an example. Break the kid's legs, maybe worse. Send a message that nobody crossed the Hells Angels without consequences. They'd picked Marcus to do it. I went to the warehouse where they were holding him, Marcus said, his voice flat. I saw this kid tied to a chair, crying, begging for his life. And I saw my son. That's all I could see. Ethan, 12 years old, scared and alone, and I was supposed to destroy him. What did you do? Sheriff Hayes asked. I cut him loose, told him to run. Then I went to the club president and told him I was done. How'd that go over? Marcus laughed bitterly. About as well as you'd expect. They gave me 48 hours to reconsider. I gave them 48 seconds. By the time they came looking for me, I was already on the road. And they've been looking for you ever since. 6 months. I've been running for 6 months. Marcus looked down at Lily, who was listening with wide, serious eyes. I thought I'd lost them. I thought this town was far enough off the grid that they'd never find me. The Facebook post, Emma said. The Facebook post. Someone at the accident scene must have recognized me. Or my bike. Or the jacket. He shook his head. Doesn't matter how. What matters is they know where I am now. Sheriff Hayes closed his notebook. Mr. Stone, I have to be honest with you. Riverside is a small town. We don't have the resources to provide round-the-clock protection against a motorcycle gang. I know. The men we arrested tonight are small fish. They'll be out on bail by morning, and there will be others coming to take their place. I know. So what's your plan? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Lily, really looked at her, like he was memorizing her face. I have to leave. No! Lily grabbed his arm. You promised. You promised you'd stay. Lily, you can't leave. You just got here. The town voted for you to stay. You're supposed to get better and be part of our family and… Lily, Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. If I stay, those men will keep coming. And eventually they won't just come for me. They'll come for anyone who gets in their way. Your mama, your grandma, you. Lily's lip trembled. I don't care. But I do. Marcus reached out and cupped her face in his hand. You gave me everything you had. Your star money, your trust, your belief that I could be good. I'm not going to repay that by putting you in danger. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Somewhere far away. Somewhere they can't find me. You'll be alone again. Maybe, but I'll know that you're safe. And that's worth more than anything. Lily started to cry. Not the dramatic sobs of a child throwing a tantrum, but the quiet, heartbroken tears of someone who understood loss all too well. "I don't want you to go," she whispered. "I don't want to go either." Marcus's own eyes were wet. But sometimes loving someone means leaving them, so they can be happy, so they can be safe. That's not fair. No, sweetheart, it's not. Emma watched this exchange with tears streaming down her own face. She wanted to argue, wanted to find another solution, wanted to promise Marcus that everything would be okay if he just stayed. But she knew he was right. As long as the Hells Angels wanted him dead, everyone around him was in danger. Lily, Margaret, the whole town that had rallied to his defense. Staying wasn't brave. Staying was selfish. Leaving was the hardest, bravest thing he could do. "When?" Emma asked quietly. Marcus looked at the sheriff. "How long can you hold those men?" 72 hours, maybe, if we push it. Then I leave in 72 hours. Marcus turned back to Lily. "We have 3 days. Let's make them count." The next 3 days were the most bittersweet of Emma's life. Marcus was discharged from the hospital, against medical advice, but Dr. Chen agreed it was the safest option, and moved into Pastor Miller's church basement, where he could recover while staying out of sight. Lily visited every day after school. They colored pictures together. They talked about butterflies and stars and the difference between Marines and soldiers. They played card games that Marcus taught her from his military days, games with strange names and stranger rules that made Lily giggle with delight. And they talked about what it meant to be brave. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," Marcus told her. "Being brave means you do the right thing, even when you're scared." "That's what Daddy said." "Your daddy was a smart man." "He was the bravest person I ever knew," Lily paused. "Until I met you." Marcus shook his head. "I'm not brave, Lily. I'm a coward. I've been running my whole life." "You're not running anymore. You're choosing to leave so we'll be safe. That's different." "Is it?" "Yes." Lily's voice was firm. "Running is when you're scared for yourself. Leaving is when you're scared for someone else. You're leaving because you love us. That's the bravest thing of all." Marcus stared at this 7-year-old philosopher who had somehow understood something that had taken him 37 years to learn. "How did you get so wise?" "Daddy," Lily said simply, "and Mama, and Grandma, and now you." On the last night they had dinner together. Emma, Lily, Margaret, Marcus, Dr. Chen, Pastor Miller, even Sheriff Hayes stopped by briefly. They crowded into the small church basement, eating lasagna that Margaret had made and pretending that tomorrow wasn't coming. Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him, people who had been strangers just weeks ago, who were now the closest thing to family he'd had in years. "I want to say something." Everyone quieted. 3 weeks ago, I crashed my motorcycle in this town. I was broken, alone, and pretty sure I was going to die. I'd given up on everything, on people, on the world, on myself. He looked at Lily. Then a little girl walked into my hospital room with a pink piggy bank and told me that everyone deserves someone. She gave me everything she had, not because I deserved it, but because she believed I could be better. His voice cracked. "I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know if I'll ever see any of you again. But I want you to know that what you've done for me, what Lily did for me, it changed something. Something I thought was dead. Something I thought I'd lost forever." "What?" Lily asked. "Hope." Marcus wiped his eyes roughly. "You gave me hope. And no matter what happens, no matter where I end up, I'm going to carry that with me. I'm going to try every single day to be the person you believe I am." Lily got up from her chair and walked around the table to where Marcus sat. She climbed into his lap, carefully, mindful of his healing injuries, and wrapped her arms around his neck. "I love you, Mr. Marcus." It was the first time she'd said it, the first time anyone had said it to him in years. Marcus held her tight, tears flowing freely now. "I love you too, sweetheart. I love you too." The room was silent except for the sound of crying. Emma, Margaret, even the sheriff quickly excusing himself to get some air. "Promise me something," Lily said into his shoulder. Anything. Promise me you won't forget. Forget what? That you're good, that you're brave, that you're worth loving. She pulled back to look at him with those impossibly blue eyes. Promise me you'll remember, even when it's hard, even when you're alone, even when you think nobody cares. Marcus looked at this child who had saved his life in every way that mattered. I promise. Pinky swear? He held up his pinky. She wrapped her tiny finger around it. Pinky swear. The morning came too soon. Marcus stood in the church parking lot with a single duffel bag, clothes donated by the community, some cash from the recovery fund, enough to get him started somewhere new. A bus ticket to Phoenix was in his pocket, the Veterans Center that Carlos had told him about. One last chance to put his life together. Emma and Lily stood before him, Margaret a few steps behind. You have the address? Emma asked. I have it. And the phone number, in case you need anything? In case I need anything. Marcus smiled sadly. Emma, I can never thank you enough for what you've done. Don't thank me, thank Lily. I was just following her lead. Marcus looked down at the little girl who had changed everything. She was wearing her yellow sunflower dress again, the same one she'd worn when she gave him her piggy bank. I have something for you, he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Lily took it, confused. What is it? Open it. She carefully tore the envelope and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a certificate, fancy, official-looking, with gold borders and an embossed seal. International Star Registry, Lily read slowly. Certificate of Registration. Keep reading. Star name, James Anderson Star. Constellation, Orion. Lily looked up, her eyes wide. You bought Daddy's star? With my own money. The recovery fund paid for my bus ticket and some supplies. But your piggy bank money, I saved that. Every penny, and I used it for what it was supposed to be used for. Lily stared at the certificate, her hands trembling. But that was your money. I gave it to you. You gave it to me so I'd know that someone cared. And I did. I do. Marcus knelt down to her level. But that money was meant for your daddy. It was meant to give him a place in the sky, and that's exactly where it went. Lily threw herself into his arms, sobbing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Every night, when you look up at the stars, you'll see him. Orion's belt, 3 stars in a row. Your daddy's star is the one just above, to the left, the bright one. How will I find it? Marcus pulled back and pointed up at the sky, even though it was morning and the stars were invisible. Your mama will help you, and when you find it, you talk to your daddy. Tell him everything. Tell him about school and your friends and your butterflies. He paused. Tell him about me. Tell him I'm trying to be good. Tell him I'm trying to deserve the chance his daughter gave me. Lily nodded fiercely, clutching the certificate to her chest. I'll tell him every night. Good. Marcus stood up, wincing at the pain in his ribs. That's all I ask. The bus pulled into the lot. Marcus picked up his duffel bag. He looked at Emma, at Margaret, at Lily. This isn't goodbye, he said. I don't believe in goodbye. This is... See you later. See you later, Emma repeated, her voice thick with tears. See you later, Mr. Marcus. Lily waved, still clutching her father's star certificate. Don't forget your promise. Never. Marcus touched his chest, right over his heart. It's right here. Always. He turned and walked toward the bus. And then a car screeched into the parking lot. Emma's heart stopped. She grabbed Lily, pulling her daughter behind her, ready to run or fight or die protecting her child. But the car wasn't black. It wasn't threatening. It was a dusty silver minivan, and the person who jumped out was a woman in her mid-30s with brown hair and desperate eyes. Wait, she screamed. Wait, don't go. Marcus froze. The woman ran toward him, and behind her, Climbing out of the minivan's passenger side was a boy, 12 years old, brown hair, scared expression. Marcus's duffel bag hit the ground. Jennifer? His voice was barely a whisper. Ethan? The woman, Jennifer, stopped a few feet away, breathing hard. The Veterans Center in Phoenix. Carlos gave me the address. He said you were finally getting help. I drove all night to get here before you left. How did you find? It doesn't matter. What matters is, she stopped, looking at the bus, at Emma and Lily, at the small crowd that had gathered. Can we talk, please? Marcus couldn't speak. He couldn't move. He just stared at the woman he'd loved and lost, and at the boy he'd missed growing up. Dad? Ethan's voice broke the spell. Yeah, buddy, it's me. You look different. I feel different. Good different? Marcus thought about the past 3 weeks, about Emma and Lily and Margaret, about the piggy bank and the board meeting and the nights he'd spent crying in a hospital bed, overwhelmed by kindness he didn't deserve. Yeah, he said, good different. Jennifer stepped closer. I saw the news. Someone shared the story online. The little girl with the piggy bank, the town that rallied around a stranger, the biker who refused to hurt a child. Her eyes were wet. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was some other Marcus Stone, some other broken man trying to put himself back together. It's me. I know, Carlos confirmed it. She reached out and touched his face, the first time she'd touched him in 4 years. He said you're different now. He said you finally stopped running. I'm still running. The club. I know about the club. I know about Danny Reyes. I know everything. Jennifer's voice hardened. The FBI picked up the guys who came after you. They're using them to build a case against the whole organization. The threat is being neutralized. Marcus felt the world tilt beneath his feet. What? Carlos has connections. So does the Veterans Center. When they heard what was happening, they started making calls. Jennifer smiled through her tears. You have friends, Marcus. More than you know. People who believe you're worth saving. I don't understand. You don't have to understand. You just have to stay. She looked at Lily, who was watching the whole exchange with intense fascination. Is that her? The girl with the piggy bank? That's her. That's Lily. Jennifer walked over to where Emma stood with her daughter. She knelt down to Lily's level. Hi, Lily. I'm Jennifer. Marcus is... He was my husband, a long time ago. Lily tilted her head. Are you the one who gave up on him? Jennifer flinched. Yes, I am. Why? Because I was tired. Because I was scared. Because I didn't know how to help him. And I thought walking away was easier than watching him destroy himself. That's very sad. It is. It's the saddest thing I've ever done. Jennifer's voice cracked. But I'm here now. Because I read about what you did. I read about how a 7-year-old girl gave a stranger everything she had. And I thought, if a child can have that kind of faith, maybe I can too. Lily considered this for a long moment. Then she looked at Marcus. Do you still love her? Marcus nodded slowly. I never stopped. Do you still love Ethan? More than anything in the world. Lily turned back to Jennifer. Then you should give him another chance. Everyone deserves someone, even people who made mistakes, even people who gave up. Jennifer started to cry. You're an extraordinary little girl. I know. Lily said it without arrogance, just simple fact. Mama says I got it from Daddy. The bus driver honked impatiently. Marcus looked at the bus, then at his family, both families, the one he'd lost and the one he'd found. I don't know what to do, he admitted. Emma stepped forward. Yes, you do. Emma, you came here broken. You're leaving whole. That's what this town gave you. That's what Lily gave you. She smiled through her tears. Now go home, Marcus, not to Phoenix. Home. To your son. To the life you thought you'd lost. But the money I owe, the recovery fund, will be fine. The GoFundMe is still going. People are still donating. Emma laughed softly. You're famous now, you know. The biker and the little girl. It's been on the news. People from all over the country are sending money. How much? Last time I checked, over $200,000. Marcus staggered. That's impossible. That's hope. That's what happens when people remember how to care about each other. Emma reached out and squeezed his hand. Go, Marcus. Be happy. Be the person Lily believes you are. Marcus looked at Lily one last time. I'll never forget you. You better not. Lily ran forward and hugged him hard. And you have to come visit every Christmas and my birthday and whenever you want. I promise. Pinky swear? He held up his pinky. She wrapped her finger around it. Pinky swear. Lily pulled back and handed him something. A piece of paper folded carefully. What's this? A picture of Grace the butterfly, the one with the mismatched wings who can still fly. Lily smiled. That's you, Mr. Marcus. You got hurt and your wings don't match anymore, but you can still fly. Marcus unfolded the paper. The drawing was simple. A butterfly with one perfect wing and one scarred wing, soaring above a field of flowers. Under it, in careful crayon letters, Lily had written, For Mr. Marcus, keep flying, love, Lily. He couldn't speak. He just held the picture and cried. The bus driver honked again, then gave up and pulled away without him. It didn't matter. Marcus wasn't going to Phoenix anymore. He was going home. 6 months later, Lily got a letter. It came in a thick envelope with a Phoenix postmark, addressed to Miss Lily Anderson, the bravest person I know. Inside was a photograph and a note. The photograph showed Marcus standing in front of a small house with a freshly painted porch. He was smiling, really smiling, not the careful, guarded expression she remembered. Jennifer stood beside him, and Ethan was in front, holding a sign that said, Welcome home, Dad. The note read, Dear Lily, I promised I'd write, and I always keep my promises to you. Jennifer and I got remarried last month. Small ceremony. Ethan was my best man. I wish you could have been there. I'm working now. Construction. Just like I said I would. Turns out I'm pretty good with my hands when I'm not using them to hurt people. I go to therapy twice a week. I talk about the war and the club and all the things I spent years trying to forget. It's hard. Some days it feels impossible. But then I look at the picture of Grace the butterfly you gave me. I had it framed, did I tell you? And I remember what you said. I can still fly. Ethan asks about you all the time. He wants to meet the girl who saved his dad. I told him you didn't save me. You just reminded me that I was worth saving. That's different. That's harder. I think about you every day, Lily. When things get tough, when I start to forget who I'm trying to be, I hear your voice in my head. You're good, you just forgot. And I try a little harder. I fight a little longer. I keep flying. Your piggy bank money is still in my account. I tried to donate it to charity, but it didn't feel right. That money belongs to you. It always did. I'm just keeping it safe until I can give it back with interest. Thank your mama for me, and your grandma, and everyone in Riverside who gave a broken man a second chance. But mostly, thank you. For seeing me when nobody else would. For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. For teaching me that everyone deserves someone, even people who've forgotten how to be good. I love you, kiddo. I always will. Keep watching Orion. Keep talking to your daddy. And keep being exactly who you are. The bravest, wisest, most beautiful soul I've ever known. See you later. Marcus P.S. Ethan says to tell you that your butterfly drawing is now hanging in his room. He looks at it every night before bed. He says it reminds him that broken things can still be beautiful. Lily read the letter 3 times. Then she carried it to her window and looked up at the night sky. It was clear tonight, the stars bright and endless against the velvet dark. She found Orion easily now. She'd practiced every night since Marcus left. 3 stars in a row, the belt of the hunter. And just above, to the left, the bright star that bore her father's name. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered. "I got a letter from Mr. Marcus today. He's happy now. He has his family back. He's flying again." The star twinkled, and Lily smiled. "I told you he was good. I told you he just forgot. But I helped him remember, just like you helped Mama remember after you went away." She pressed her hand against the window, reaching toward the light. "I miss you every day, but I know you're watching. I know you're proud." She paused, thinking, "I'm going to keep helping people, Daddy. People who are sad, people who are lost, people who think nobody loves them. Because that's what you did. That's what good people do." A tear rolled down her cheek, but she was smiling. "Good night, Daddy. I love you. Say hi to the angels for me." She turned away from the window and climbed into bed, clutching Marcus's letter to her chest. In the photograph, a broken man stood whole again, surrounded by the family he'd thought he'd lost forever. And somewhere in Riverside, Colorado, a 7-year-old girl fell asleep knowing that she had changed the world. Not with money, not with power, not with anything the world typically called important, just with a pink piggy bank and a simple truth that everyone should know, but too many people forget. Everyone deserves someone. Even the lost ones, even the broken ones, even the ones who think they're beyond saving. Everyone deserves someone to believe in them. And sometimes that someone is a 7-year-old girl with $2,847 and a heart big enough to hold the whole world. That's the story of how Lily Anderson saved Marcus Stone. But really, it's the story of how they saved each other. And that's the best kind of story there is. The end.